Honestly,
Irene, Cheryl, Irene.
I was gonna say, I can't figure this out.
Sure, what, I thought it was.
Emotional scenario. Let me get Sue.
Which, well, that's usually, that's sometimes how it happens. Not always. Okay.
And so we had like, I took down my. When I mean, we do that. Don't feel like we have. So I would just go in and log in, how it said on here. Yeah, and so if we're going campus, and go into that module, go on the module, and like, right, and then you protect your screen. I wouldn't have to go on. It's really more, yeah, it's really more either that or you want it to chat to our. It's really more of.
a microphone.
Oh,
No.
oh, I don't have, oh, yeah, she's gonna. Yeah, it was only because they. 5 o'clock in the morning, I got the township. But yeah, anytime I said it's. If for some reason, like it does snow, he's still sitting on speaker is right. And then I have to know where I can make it, and then I can still run it from here. I just wanted to set that.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you this one.
Okay. Just like to see what's.
So we did the syllabus and then I did, yeah, with the ones that Patty fixed.
Yeah.
Fixed, but, correctly, yeah. changed up a little bit.
Fix.
I'm almost done the herbaceous.
Okay. There's no rush.
Peggy, can you tell me who's online? You don't mind? Okay, we give everybody paper tonight. I need to keep them for. I know, they're a little high. Huh? Yeah, no, I know. Somebody put the papers all out on the tables and not everybody's here and I don't want them to walk.
Oh, that was my fault.
Oh, that's okay. I'm okay that they're there. It's just, sometimes, I know that somebody I saw was online and I pulled people.
Oh.
5 online, okay.
Hi.
Do you remember this?
Oh, my goodness. Gracious, the new and improved.
All right, I'm trying to turn these down. They were a little high.
How many are in the class? How many are in the class?
Oh, I don't know. It's a tech.
Good morning. How we doing? Everyone.
How many are we? I don't know. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a couple people are online today.
How many people are in the class?
32.
Wow.
Yeah, 32.
Who are they? They don't come?
Yeah.
Don't they know what they're missing?
I didn't realize that if you grade my. You know what? Right. When you answer. Oh, okay.
That's okay. That's what.
Right.
All right, good morning, everybody. Well, it seems like we might be a little shy on people or people are coming in. I heard that there's an accident or something up on 70. Yes. That's good.
Yes,
So,
I heard that.
so there may be just traffic woes, so,
There's somebody.
okay, so what am I doing? I'm not sure. Hi, Irene.
Hi,
You got your water.
I have my water, thank you very much.
So the microphones are here, so I know they're gonna be able to hear you fine. It would just be whether the group back here is able to hear you fine.
Oh, okay,
Then, so if not, we'll get you the microphone then, but right now we're good.
okay.
Yeah, and we'll. Okay, so I know it's still a little early, but just gonna chit chat. So good morning, everybody. And I don't know, I forgot all of last week. It was a whirlwind for me, so hopefully I don't mix up my words too much this week. Luckily you don't have me for till the 20th, so. Any particular questions? Like Peggy's helping me look online for at the evaluations to see what things we can check and do. I will start any questions that I'm not sure. There was a question about seed, somebody said seed dissension. And I'm like, I don't know if that was the word that they meant to use. So, because there's seed dispersion and then there's seed dissection. So I'm not sure if they were, because I don't, yeah. Dissensions are in the ranks, but not in the seed. So if anybody, I can put in chat and try to, or not in chat, excuse me, in Canvas on, the discussion section, we can talk about it. Okay. I don't know whether to give you another minute or two. Oh, Linda, would you like to make an announcement about, helpline assignments?
I would. I was already taught out with this. I'm grading the helpline assignments. And a lot of people don't do them. And I remember quite well, it's kind of scary and like, what do I need this for? But now that I'm on the other side, I realize how important answering those questions are. Because they prepare you for the kinds of questions you're actually going to get in the helpline and when you're out at Master Garden. So I know it's scary, but try to take it, and it's okay. I'm very nice. If you don't have them.
So the helpline assignments, yeah, the idea with that is just to kind of give you an idea of some of the questions that might come in, or just, and make you think about how would you answer it, even as of you guys right now. And then what, we'll go into when we get into diagnostics is how we would answer it as Master Gardener volunteers. And what resources would you use? So, yes, Peggy.
Based upon, again, some of the evaluations, just a reminder that there are people online, they have trouble hearing. Make sure you're clear with your question so that we can all hear. That goes
Yeah.
for me also.
Yeah, it's actually more, yeah.
I mean, I'm part of the problem, so.
So Peggy's telling everybody to speak up if you guys can't hear her online.
That's what anyone that's asking a question, to make sure either you speak louder so they can hear, or you tell Sue to repeat the question.
Yeah, or we remember to repeat the question.
We will try.
Cell phones, thank you. I don't remember that stuff. Cell phones, oh, we don't have Silka's little note up there. Cell phones off or turned down on vibrates. Again, if you do need to take a phone call, I don't think there's anybody in the conference room, but just kind of take it out in the hallway if you can. I know Irene's PowerPoint is jam-packed. You may want to take lots of notes, and you're more than welcome to try. Irene has a lot. So I did put on Canvas the PowerPoints as individual slides, like when you come, just like you're seeing them when they come up here, so that you don't have like 6 or 7 on a page and you're trying to read this tiny writing. So hopefully you'll be able to enlarge that and read the information that you want. And okay, so I want to introduce Mrs. Irene Wana. I was already Miss, but Miss Irene Wana. Yes. Oh, you just look like you were, okay.
No, he's happy I'm here.
He's spreading the joy. So we do have a few veterans with us today. So Irene Wanted is, our, our most seasoned-
Original.
I didn't want to say old, original master gardener from our class of 1990 in Ocean
First
County.
class.
First class, and, Irene's from Monmouth County, but they didn't have a class yet then, so she started in our county and now she's gotten dual citizenship or dual volunteership. So, Irene is,
commitment.
yes, Irene is a wonderful educator and a wealth of knowledge, so
Aw.
I'm gonna let you take it away with, I almost said herbicides, herbaceous plants. Okay.
You know, Sue has a lot on her hands, so I hope you're treating her very well and not asking too much of her.
Oh, it's all good.
Okay,
It gets done.
yes, okay, so I am from the first class, original, and I'm still here. And I think I'm sane. I do love gardening. I started vegetable gardening. However, I went into flower gardening and shrubs, and I've been gardening for, 38 years in Monmouth County. I have a wonderful piece of property that has a lot of challenges. And of course, lately we have deer, which we've had for quite a number of years. But when I started, when I used to come down here for the classes, we had no deer. And I felt so wonderful, you know, I don't have that problem. Well, now we do. So anyway, so how to create a beautiful garden with herbaceous plants. We all have wonderful ideas. Oh, by the way, how many people here are like new gardeners where you haven't gardened at all? Okay, so some of this you probably know already, and I'm very happy to hear that you've already had different classes where some of the slides will be touching on whatever you had before. So what's good about that is I don't have to dwell on it because you already know all that information. Anyway, we all have these wonderful ideas of these beautiful gardens that we see either in catalogs or on TV or wherever. And if you're starting, you have to start small. Try not to have anything more than 25 square feet. And that could be 6 by 4 or 8 by 3 or any way you want to make it. After all, it's your garden. Okay, 25 square feet can fit at least around 20 plants, and 20 plants for a starting garden, that's pretty good. And it won't be overwhelming because sometimes we bite off more than we can chew. And as gardeners, I think we kind of do that. All right, and as you get more experience, you obviously can make more beds or make the bed larger. Okay, the layout of the garden. You will be planting and doing things in your garden. So try not to make it any wider or deeper than 3 to 4 feet. That way you can go into your bed without having to step in it because you don't want compaction. And you all learned about compaction, which is not very good. So try to have it no wider than 3 to 4 feet. Otherwise, you're going to have to create a path. All right. Then you also need the path, not only for your walking, but you need the path to be at least 2.5 to 4 feet wide. Why? Because you're going to be working in your garden, aren't you? And you will be having a wheelbarrow and other equipment, and you want to be able to go down the path without disturbing your garden. And you can also try to make it so that 2 people can walk down the path and admire your garden very nicely. And by the way, my slides are chock full of information. If you are given permission to take pictures with your camera of any of the slides, I am not going to slow down because of that. I will be able to go back after I'm done for you to take pictures of whatever. Plus, it's going to be online, so you really don't have to, unless you're one of these instant gratification type of people. Okay, which a lot of gardeners are. Okay, things to consider. Site selection, really very important. Is it near where you have water? Because water is very important. You can't really have a garden unless you have a source of water. Is it near your house? The closer it is to your house, to your kitchen or wherever exit you use, the more often you'll be going into your garden. If it's far away, then many times, I have many beds. And I know the beds that are farther away, I really don't look at very often, if at all. But I do try to go out there. And also, when you're starting a new garden, make sure that you know where all the utility lines, underground lines are. Because if you nick something or break something, you're gonna have a problem, call 811. All right, choose the right spot for the right plant for the right spot. Okay, take an assessment of the site, really important. Things that you need to consider is light. Light is extremely important. All growing things or most growing things need light. And how much sun does it get? Moisture, like I said before, they all need moisture. And we need to know how much natural moisture you have in your garden. And I will talk about that more. And of course, what soil type you have. And I know most of you have sandy soil. I've been blessed with clay soil. And some of you have salty soil. Any of you live by the beach and have a problem with salty soil? Okay, I will be addressing that because that is a problem. Okay, most important thing to consider is light availability. How much sun does the spot where you're going to be having your garden, how much sun is getting there during the day? All right, you have to observe when and for how long this site gets the sun. And keep in mind, you don't do this during the winter because obviously no leaves, so you get a lot of sun. And also the best time to do this is in May, June, and July, when you have that summer sun, and also when the canopy of the trees have filled in, so you see exactly where the sun is. And the best way to do that is with your smartphone or with a digital camera. Wherever you're going to be planting, whatever it is that you're going to be planting, go out there with your camera, either phone or digital, and take pictures at different times of the day. And it doesn't have to be all the same day. It could be during a week or 2 weeks. What's great about these pictures that you're taking, all of them have date stamp and time stamp. So you will see, oh my God, 10 o'clock, I didn't have any sun at that time, but at 3 o'clock I did, or vice versa. I was even fooled. You know, when I go to work, there'd be sun all over the driveway. And you know, when you buy plants, you don't plant them all the time really very quickly. And I would put all the plants where I thought, you know, the sun would be. And one day I came home early and oh my God, there was no sun there at all. So a lot of areas in your yard, you think it's sun all the time, but they don't. All right, so what is full sun? Full sun is a minimum of 6 to 8 hours of sun, direct sun between 10 and 4 o'clock. And afternoon sun is the obviously hotter sun. And we all have a tendency to overestimate how much sun we get, just like we overestimate how much money we have and how much money we can spend. We all overestimate a lot of things. And here is a chart that shows you, depending on how many trees or whatever you have, how much shade you get from that situation. And this is all information that you will see, so you don't have to be taking copious notes. But the thing that's really important is you have to read the plant labels, because you have to look and see what kind of sun do they need. And they have different types of symbols for the sun. Usually it's a full sun, nice and yellow. And that means that that plant needs 6 to 8 hours of sun. Then there's part shade or part sun. They're used interchangeably, and that is less than 6 hours. So it's anything in between. And then we have this plant, this hellebore, which I'm going to talk about later. And it has choices. It has a part shade and full shade. Now, when you see that there are two, The first one is the preferred one. The second one, the plant will do fine. It may not have as many blooms, it may not be as lush, but it'll be okay. So choose the site, the first one that's given. Okay, this is a garden that one of my friends had. And as you can see, this is part shade, part sun. And what you notice is that this area here has more shade than this area. So if you have a long bed, don't think that that whole bed is exactly the same. Because the sun limitation or availability is not all the same throughout the bed. All right, this was my, in my yard. This tree has since fallen down. But you see all that nice sun dancing on the lawn? This is light dapple shade, but that's called part shade. So just because you see a lot of big areas of sun dancing around doesn't mean that it's full sun. Okay, and here's an area, this is not my yard, but you can see depending on how much sun hits the ground, and usually the sun, it dances around, it doesn't stay put. So this is considered full shade. Now, full shade doesn't mean under your porch shade, okay? It means that it gets some sun, at least 4 hours of sun, and dense shade is anything less than that, like 3 hours or less. Here I took pictures on the street, and you can see that with all the trees, there are certain areas with streets that have a lot of trees, and this is part shade or full shade situation for this homeowner. And when you have evergreen trees, basically it's pretty dense shade. So mushrooms or whatever, ivy. All right, so this is a summary of the light availability. Full sun is 6 to 8 hours. Full shade is 4 hours or less. And anything in between, which makes it so much easier, anything in between is considered part sun or part shade. But always remember that if that sun is in the afternoon, it is a hotter sun. So even if you buy the plant that says part shade and you plant it in this area and it has that hot afternoon sun, you have to be careful because not all part shade plants can tolerate that hot sun. Some of them like that morning sun. So you have to make sure that you read those labels. Very important. And here are more examples of labels. And there are some plants that can tolerate full sun and part shade, and some even full sun and full shade. All right, the next one is moisture. Moisture is very important, especially natural moisture that you have in your yard. Now, those of you who have sandy soil, which is all of you, anybody here have clay soil? I didn't think so. I'm supposed to have clay, sandy soil, but I don't. Anyway, sandy soil is very difficult because the water goes right through it and you have to water it more often. Also, moisture is taken away if this garden is near a tree. Tree roots suck up a lot of that moisture. And also if your garden is going to be on a slope, and you can have gardens on a slope. I did that in front of my house because it was a lawn, and I was afraid that when my husband was mowing the lawn on his tractor, that it was gonna fall over. So I figured, let me plant it, and it's doing fine. Okay, if you have a problem with moisture, you need to buy drought-tolerant plants, and it will say that on the label. And they are drought tolerant, not when you plant them, but when they get established. And what does established mean? Established means that when you plant that plant, you water it and you keep watering it every day if it's very hot, or every other day until you tug at that plant and it doesn't budge. which means that it decided, oh, I'm home, I'm gonna send my roots, and the roots grab on to your native soil, your garden, and it's established. So you don't have to keep watering it all the time, unless, of course, it's a very hot, droughty period. And also during the first year of these herbaceous plants, it's best to water that area whenever it's droughty or whenever you see the plant drooping or the leaves drooping. And there is a point of no return. You know, just because it's drooping and you water it doesn't mean that it'll always come back. You have to know your plants and make sure that they're watered and well established. Okay, so if you do have a hot, dry site, the best thing for you to do is obviously get drought tolerant plants. Now, most of the plants here and any plants that have gray in them are pretty drought tolerant. And why is that? Well, why do you think that those plants are gray? The leaf is really green. It's the little hairs on those leaves that sort of is like a down jacket. It insulates it and it prevents the leaf from the moisture from evaporating from the leaf. So that's why a lot of these plants, once they are established, are very drought tolerant. Another reason, obviously, is if they send down deep roots. So that's another thing. However, most gray or silver type plants are very drought tolerant once they're established. And all of these plants cannot stand being in standing water. If they're in standing water, what happens is, just like us, if we don't know how to swim, yes, there's oxygen in water, but when you're drowning, you're not getting out that oxygen that you need. Well, these plants also don't know how to get the oxygen out of that water, and they actually drown and then they rot. And sometimes when you go out into your garden in the spring and you look to see if a plant has come back, and it hadn't come back, you're wondering, oh my God, it must have been an awful winter. Well, not necessarily. You know, in the spring and in the fall, we get a lot of rain. And some of those plants may have been in an area where the water hung around a little bit longer than you would like it, and it killed the plant, and that plant just gave up and rotted away. So you need to be careful as far as how much water an area gets, especially if it's these types of gray or silver or blue-gray plants. Another type of plant that's really great as far as drought tolerant, and they really don't need as much water as many other plants, are succulents. Succulents are plants that have thick leaves, and the reason why they're these thick glaucous type of leaves is because there's moisture in them. And that moisture keeps that plant hydrated. And of course, most of you know hens and chicks, they're considered succulents. There are perennials that are succulents as well as annuals. And then there are these wonderful sedums or stone crops. There's a whole slew of them, and they also are very drought tolerant once they're established. And also they all need good drainage. They cannot stand to be in sitting water. They'll just rot away. All right, so the most difficult type of situation is dry shade due to the thick canopy of trees, tree root competition, walls and fences which do not allow the sun at all, or rain to go there, and soils that drain too quickly, such as what you guys have, and slopes where moisture just runs off. So shade robs the sun's energy, and the dryness makes it so they don't get that moisture that they need. And then the plant, unfortunately, is gone. However, in the plant world, there are so many plants, so many choices, and there are actually a lot of plants that can tolerate that. But you have to make sure that you do your research and you read the label. Hostas and all of these, they're all listed in, well, you'll see them online. And I show you these pictures to show you that all situations that you have in your garden, there are plants to put there. So you do not have to despair. All right, moisture. This is the problem that I have. Besides having clay soil, which really hangs on to the moisture, I have a high water table because I live not far from the ocean. And this is in my town. One day we were coming home during the winter from having lunch out, and I saw this on the left, and I said, George, stop the car. I gotta get out. I gotta take a picture. And this is high water table. This lasts for a number of hours, if not a number of days. And then I took a close up, and what did I see? I saw a duck. And if you have ducks in your yard, you have a problem. So obviously these trees don't mind. You can see that they're big, they've grown there, they've lived there for all this time because they can tolerate this type of thing and their roots don't die. This is my yard. This was taken a number of years ago. I had my husband build me a raised bed because I wanted to grow vegetables, but you're not supposed to be gardening in wet soil. So that is in the spring. I have all that water, and when I walk in the back of my property, it's like walking on a sponge. It's all nice and wet. This is also in my garden. And here is a Siberian iris, and they can tolerate it. They don't mind it. So I don't need a raised bed in order to plant them. So do your research if you have that problem, where you have a downspout and there's water gathering there. There are plants that you can grow there, plenty of them. And here are just some of them. And all the plants that I'm showing you, I would say 99% of them I have grown. So I know how much they love my moisture. Okay, soil. You guys have learned all about soil, so I don't have to really talk about it. And the deal breaker here, of course, is salt in the soil, which is toxic to plants. But look at all the wonderful plants that can tolerate that. So make sure you read the label. And there are also a lot of native plants that don't growing in salty soil or in wet soil. Also very important is the hardiness zone. You have to, if you're growing plants that you want to come back next year, you have to know what zone you're in. And they're divided in 10 degrees. So that way you will know, and they take an average of the coldest temperature in the winter, and then they make this wonderful chart, and they tell you what the degrees are and the numbers, and this is where you guys are. I'm over here. And we are 6B to 7B, depending on what the area is. And also you probably have learned that your yard, your property has microclimates. So sometimes you may get away with planting plants that are not really that hardy, but because of the microclimates, they may do very well in your garden. And if you're planting, you are planting planters or containers, you have to make sure that the plants that you're planting in there are 2 zones hardier, or the number is 2 numbers smaller than your number, because the plants in the container do not have that ambient soil that protects them from the winds and all that's happening during the winter, whereas the containers, they get all kinds of stuff going on there. So it has to be 2 degrees lower in order for the plant to come back. What can I say? There is, Rutgers put out a nice, what do you call it, fact sheet. And of course, animals are just like us. They like different things. So the fact sheets aren't exactly precise because they may like something that you have that your neighbor may not have, and they're hungry, so they'll eat a lot of stuff. All right, deer. I don't know if anybody has spoken to you about deer, but I'm going to go through it very briefly. They usually don't browse anything that has a fragrance, like minty plants or any plants that have an aroma, whether it's a sweet aroma or a nasty aroma, they don't like that. Also, they're like toddlers. They have their likes and dislikes. They don't like anything that is fuzzy. They don't like that mouthfeel or plants that have highly dissected leaves. They won't eat that. Toxic plants, we have a lot of toxic plants, and they normally don't eat that unless they're really hungry and there's nothing else, so they will eat that plant. Prickly plants. They usually don't eat that, but they love holly and they love roses. And they don't care whether they have thorns or not. So it's a pain in the butt, but what are you gonna do? That, when you see that picture, that means that deer love that plant. And ornamental grasses, because they don't like that mouthfeel. Okay, and here are deer-resistant plants, and I put them in your, it's online. Anyway.
It's in Canvas and it is.
It's on, yeah, it's on Canvas. I'll just say on Canvas. Okay, and as you can see, a lot of them have kind of foliage or flowers that really the mouthfeel isn't that great, and also aromatic. All right, so this is, I put this in here because it's really important. We have too many deer. New Jersey is not doing too much as far as deer control is. So when you're driving, during the twilight hours is when the deer are out, and you have to be really very careful. Watch out for glowing eyes on the side of the road because the lights are reflected, and you may want to slow down because the deer, usually they're not just one deer, there's usually more than one. So slow down when you see them. Honking or flashing the light isn't going to do anything, so don't do it. And if you can't avoid the deer, you brake until you get up to the deer and then you let go. Because what happens is, if you're thinking and not panicking, because if you let go, what happens, the deer will go over your car. If you still have your foot on the brake, it'll go through your windshield. So this is a very important thing to remember. Okay, so site preparation. For many years, I've been told, take a hose and just, make a nice outline for your garden. And of course, I do a lot of research online. Thank God for the web. And what I discovered was something even more simple. Use the extension cord. It's so much easier to move, and you can outline your garden using that, and you can use either a PVC pipe or something that you can use to measure if you're doing a border somewhere where there's a walkway. And then use flour to demarcate the area, and please do not use paint on your grass, okay? All right, this is the easiest way to prepare an area for a garden. This is the no-dig solution, and you guys have learned from the soil talk that digging and disturbing that wonderful world under your feet is not a good thing. So lay down some newspapers. This is best done in the fall. Lay down 5 layers of newspaper, and then put mulch on there or leaves or anything during all those months, and it will take care and kill everything there, as well as nourish the soil underneath. Or if you're in a hurry, you can take off all those, your sod. And the easiest way to do this is something called a sod lifter. It is so much better than using a shovel. And it's on sale. Go online or go to Lowe's or Home Depot, and they have that. And I just saw this yesterday, and put it on the slide. So you're not going to be seeing it on Canvas. but I saw this on, Garden Gate magazine, the second issue from 1995. Can you believe that? And they tell you what to do with the sod. Don't throw it away. Put patch areas in your lawn if you have a lawn, or turn it over in your garden and it will decompose and nourish your garden, or pile it up and then put it in your compost pile. How many people here compost? What a wonderful crowd you are. Thank you. Okay, then if you, to continue to prepare, you either use a spade. I personally like a fork spade, especially since I have clay soil. And I use that to break up clods. You guys probably don't have the clods, so you don't need this little thing, which doesn't work very well. You can also rototill. If it's a big area, I give you permission for the first time to rototill, because that disturbs everything. But it's so much easier. And you know, we're not 21 anymore. Maybe some of you are, but I'm not. And this is an easier way of getting the work done. And I just put that slide there to remind you all the wonderful things that are underneath your feet. And this, I think this is in Canvas. Okay, all of you have this wonderful black gold, which is a wonderful thing to use in your garden. All right, organic amendments are good, especially if you're going to be having a perennial garden or any kind, because it does increase the nutrients in the soil and also all that wonderful wonderland underneath. Oh, you guys don't have clay soil, but for sandy soil, it retains the moisture, which is a good thing because plants do need moisture, and reduces compaction and erosion, which you've learned about. And don't go nuts and make the whole garden compost or organic amendments. You need to put in only about 25% by volume, because your plants need to get used to your native soil too. And compost is not soil, okay? It's just an amendment. Please do not use peat moss. Years ago, they used to say peat moss whenever you plant, for anything that you plant. For clay soil, not good, because you're adding a sponge to a sponge. And really, it's better to add some organic material, because peat moss is like Wonder Bread without the added nutrients. It has really no nutrients. All it does is it lowers your pH. Okay, so take time with your soil and it will reward you. Okay, so this is what it looks like, your new garden bed, right? Okay, choices, choices, choices. You get all these wonderful magazines, and there are so many choices to be had. But one of the things that all of us consider first is color. What kind of colors do we want in our garden? And you have the color wheel, and some people understand it better than I do. You have the warm colors and you have the cool colors, and your garden can be monochromatic. If you like a certain color, you can plant all your plants that color, different shades and hues of that color, or you can add colors, and usually 3 colors, no more than 3 colors is actually quite calming. But me, the more the merrier, and this is my type of gardening. I like my colors. Okay, so let's talk about colors. Green. There are so many different shades of green. This I took in at Longwood Gardens in October when there were no blooms. These are all evergreen, which means they overwinter and they look the same, well, a little tattered maybe in the spring. But look how beautiful that looks, because all the leaves from the different plants are a different size and shape. So here you have something that looks really nice and interesting and not a bloom in sight. So don't think that you have to always have blooms in order for your garden to look beautiful. And in the plant world, there are so many wonderful gold and chartreuse type plants, which are really beautiful because they just bring a nice brightness to the garden. This was at Deep Cut Garden on a rainy day. I took this picture to show you how when you have gold plants in your garden, it looks as if the sun is shining in that spot. So it's good to have some gold plants in your garden. Then we have variegation. What does variegation mean? It means that the leaves, the foliage has more than one color. And we have all kinds of wonderful chartreuse, cream, and gold variegation on a whole bunch of plants. Here is a picture that I took at one of the botanic gardens. I don't remember which one, but look at the hosta. They all have the same shape and size, but because of the coloring, it looks interesting even without the bloom. So you have chartreuse here, and you have this blue-green here, and then you have the hosta here that has both of these coloring in the leaves. So you can play with variegation very nicely. White, if you put white in the garden, it pops, and this plant, please don't ever plant it in your garden because you'll never get rid of it. This little pony means that it runs rampant, and it's very, very hard to get rid of. Believe me, I'm still trying after 30 years. Okay, there's silver variegation. Isn't that beautiful? All the wonderful choices. And usually whenever a plant has silver on it, the leaf is really green and the silver is on top of that. And then there's all this red, maroon, burgundy, bronze, all on the same leaves, some of them. Really gorgeous. Just do yourself a favor. Don't plant all these variegated plants together because your eyes need to rest and your eyes don't know where to go. So it's a little too busy unless you like that. If you like that, after all, it is your garden. Okay, black foliage. Can you believe black foliage? Really beautiful. And there was a whole, when it first came out, everybody was buying all these plants that had dark foliage like this or dark blooms. Purple, my color. I love purple. Look at these beautiful plants that have this purple coloring. Here is a garden. And in this garden, you will notice that all of the plants, except for this, have dark foliage. What do you think happens in the evening when the sun goes down and you're looking at this garden? You see one big hole with just this. So if you're the type that likes to have your wine outside in the evening, be careful how many of these wonderfully colored plants you plant together. Because if you want to be looking at something very pretty, make sure that you vary what you plant. Here are some more of these wonderful color combinations. Again, don't ever plant all these together. Have something solid. This was a bed in my garden. Oh God, I don't know, at least 20 years ago, if not longer. You will learn as you garden that your beds never stay the same from year to year. Something always changes. You either add plants or some plants just don't like it there and just disappear. So things happen, deer happens, and also neglect happened. So I don't have this anymore, but look what I did. Here is this plant that is finely textured, that is next to this hosta, and then the coloring from the hosta here, and then here. So I tried to sort of play with the colorings. Okay, now we have, besides color, we have contrasting shapes and sizes of the foliage. This is highly dissected ferns. Here is bleeding heart. And this is considered, when you're arranging flowers, as rough texture. And whenever you have plants that have this type of highly dissected fern-like foliage, try to have plants that have a bold leaf here and there to give your eyes a rest and also to make your garden a lot more interesting. We also have needle leaves. Here are annuals and perennials that have needle leaves. These are the ones that deer don't eat, as well as the one I showed you before. Try to have also a plant that has bold, solid leaves planted interspersed so that your eyes have a rest. Here is a picture that I took at one of the botanical gardens. I don't remember which one, but this illustrates perfectly exactly what I was talking about. Here we have these wonderful ferns. Oh, and by the way, everything is shiny because it was raining. I love going to botanical gardens or any gardens when it rains or after it's rained because there's nobody there. And you can take all the pictures you want and linger as long as you want. So anyway, so here is this wonderful fern, autumn fern, and what is there? There is the columbine. You have this green here, you have this blue, gray, green here, and then you have the hosta, another solid leaf. Yeah,
Sorry, just what you're using the pointer that people online can't see the pointer when you're up, so just in the middle of the picture, just kind of give a little.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, I know you don't know, but.
Yeah, oh God, sorry. Okay, so here I have a picture with fern on the left, and there's columbine in the middle of the picture, and then there's hosta. Gold standard, one of my favorite hosta, very fast growing hosta. But if you have deer, please don't plant this because I have no hostas anymore. Because my husband doesn't spray anymore. Anyway, with a gold standard, you have that nice green gold there, but you also have on the margin of the leaves, you have that nice coloring of the columbine. So here you have this beautiful vignette that really go together very nicely, complementing and contrasting at the same time. Okay, grass-like. We have plenty of plants that have grass-like foliage. And here is another, this is not my garden, also showing the different contrasting leaves, shapes mostly, and textures, how nicely they contrast and go together, making it very beautiful. And again, showing you that flowers are not the most important thing in your garden. That foliage is something to consider when you're gardening. Okay, here are just some of the flower shapes. And you can have different coloring of the same type of flower, but it's not that really interesting. However, by using various flower shapes, look how much more interesting that those gardens are. And here on the last picture, you just have yellow and red, but there are different blooms there, different plants there that have different shapes of those flowers. This is obviously grass, but plants are the same way. So try to vary the shape, the total shape of the plants too, to make it more interesting, which is what the British do with their cottage garden. And look how fascinating and interesting. Don't you wish you had this garden? Okay, so the choices, as I mentioned before, there are plenty of them. We're going to go into the bulbs, annuals, biannuals, and perennials. Okay, you have to plan. All right, your computer. It pays to research. You don't want to be wasting money on plants that won't do well in your garden. So consider all those growing conditions that I mentioned before, the light availability, the natural moisture that you have, the hardiness zone, and also unwanted plant wildlife. So research which plants will do best in your garden. And also, when you're doing your research, make sure you go to sites that are .edu, which means it's a university. They're not selling you anything. They're giving you information from research that they have done, or .org, also not selling you anything except maybe a membership. But they will tell you a lot about, the plants. .coms are entities that want to make money. So they may exaggerate a lot of things that they shouldn't because they want to sell. Okay, another wonderful, helpful source is jerseyyards.org, which is a relatively new site. I think it's been around over 5 years, maybe 10 years.
Almost 10, I think.
Yeah, really great site because you can tell them exactly what you have, the light, the water conditions, everything, and also the animals and the soil, and they will make suggestions as to what you can plant in your garden. So here you have a helping hand and they're not selling you anything. Also, research before you go to the garden center. Because, you know, we all get sucked in. I've been sucked in so much. You see something, it's beautiful, God, I want that, I gotta have it, and you buy it. Try not to do that, but try to ask questions. And if that person doesn't know the answer, find someone else or a manager and ask as many questions as possible. Because I've worked at garden centers a long time. And some of the people that work there do not always tell the truth. Because they want to sell. And sometimes they're selling on commission. Thank God I've never had to sell on commission. But even if I had to, I would never sell something to somebody that I know that plant will die wherever they want to grow that plant. All right, so you need to choose the right plant for the right spot. You got to keep that in your head all the time. All right, so plant tags are important. I know people don't like to read, but those tags aren't big. There's a lot of information there, how tall your plant will get and how wide. Also, how much sun, water, and food it needs, which means it'll tell you how much care you need to give it. And also the habit of the plant, whether it's a tall plant, a mounding plant, or a trailing plant. And that's important, especially if you're planting containers or planters, because that you want to make sure that the plants are doing what you want them to do in those containers. Okay, look for plants that are lush and well branched. That means they're healthy. Look at the leaves, make sure that they're not stunted, yellowing, or having pest problems. After all, you're paying money for this, and you don't want to bring home any problems that may spread to other plants. Look for plants that are full of buds. Avoid plants that are in full bloom. Full bloom, the plants puts a lot of energy into making those blooms. And when you plant them, they go into transplant shock. And that is hard for them to do. So avoid these full bloom plants. Plus, they won't be blooming very long because by the time you've planted them, a week or two later, those blooms are gone. So this is okay, but not really. Here is better, but this is best. If you have a choice between these three, choose the one that just has the buds. Okay, also be brazen. Make sure you look at the pot, look underneath. And if you really got cojones, you can take the plant out to see what the root system looks like. You don't want to have root-bound plants to put in your garden. And also, you want to make sure that all the roots are a nice tan color, not brown, because that means they're dead or dying. Okay, so this is best. Okay, when you are planting your garden, also try to make sure that you will have something in bloom at all times. So plant plants for the spring, the summer, and the fall, and don't bunch them all together. Disperse it so there's always something nice to look at in your garden. And again, read the label. Really important. And make sure that when you're planting your plant the sun-loving plants together, because the ones that need shade are going to suffer and die, and vice versa. Shade-loving plants, plant them all together, as well as drought-tolerant plants. And keep them away from plants that like wet. Okay, also avoid competition. I know people like to have instant gratification and like to plant plants really close together. But as you probably have learned, that whenever you plant things close together, there is competition for the sun, the moisture, and the nutrients in the soil. And when you're planting them close together, they're all battling it out, trying to get all that they need. And they're under stress. And I don't know whether you've had talks on insects and diseases, but stressed plants just exude some sort of chemical that insects and pests just notice and just hone in on that. So stressed plants, if they're planted too close together and they don't get everything that they need, not always, but many times may have problems from either pests or disease problems. This was a temporary bed. And before I had deer, I loved hostas, and I would buy as many as I could, and I would plant them in the temporary bed until I decided where it would go. Because most of my gardening, the first, I think, 10, 15 years of my gardening was shade gardening, because my husband wouldn't give me any of his lawn, and we have a wooded area. So anyway, so this was a temporary area, but I really was too busy either buying plants, working at a garden center, or doing something. And these plants, the leaves are supposed to be like this big. The plants are supposed to be this wide. Do you see any of that? No, because they had no room. Okay, so you need to give space. And even animals, when there are too many, they stop having a lot of them, a lot more babies, because they know that they cannot sustain. So plants, if they're planted too close, will never be their glorious selves if they're planted too close together. Okay, I put this together just to show you, this is 24 square feet. How many plants you can put in one area? And you can put a lot. So make a list of your desired plants. This plant has at least 10 different types of plants. Make sure you plant the shorter ones in front of the taller ones. I planted, remember that slope I told you about? Well, I figured, well, it's a slope. I can plant a taller plant in front of a shorter one, because after all, it's a slope. Didn't work that way. So listen, you'll read the label. Okay, smaller plants look best if they're planted in odd numbers, as you can see here. One large plant, you only need one. They tell you many times, three, odd numbers, 3 plants, 5 plants, whatever. It all depends on the size of the plant. If it's a huge plant, there's not much room to plant more than one of them. Okay, so when is the best time to plant these plants to reduce transplant shock? These plants at the garden center have been living in these pots that have been given enough water, enough fertilizer, enough TLC, that they are really happy in their condition. When they come to your garden and when they go into your garden, they're in a different place. It's like you move from one city or one home to another home. You need to get used to it. So plants, they also have adjustment issues. So pick a cloudy day, plant in the late afternoon or early evening. Well, what I always did was I always planted when I knew it was going to rain, although the weathermen sometimes lie, and it doesn't, but try to do that. When is the worst time to plant? On a hot sunny day, obviously, during the hot afternoon, when you won't be around to water the plants, during a hot droughty period, when the soil is wet. I know with sandy soil, it's not as much of an issue as clay soil. And also not too late in the fall because you want to get your plants established and feeling at home before the frost comes. Okay, this is what you should do. It's not a big area. Put your plants where you think that they should go. It's so much easier to move them around when they haven't been planted yet. Personally, I wouldn't put them that way. I would arrange them in a different way, but it's your garden, you arrange them the way you like. Okay, so an area that's been amended, you dig a hole a little less deep than your potted plant, because you know that once you plant, the soil will settle. So you make sure that it's a bit above. If it's an unamended bed area, you dig the hole twice the size of the plant, and you add organic material, again, not more than 25%, because the plant needs to get a taste of your wonderful native soil so that the roots will go out. Because, you know, we get lazy, plants are lazy too. If they're sitting in a situation where everything is really nice, why would they put their roots out into this wild, ungodly area that doesn't have all that wonderful nutrients that they're sitting in? So make sure that you don't put too much compost. But in both cases, water the hole before you even plant. Water it to the top, let it go down, so that way that area is nice and moist. And also after you've planted. Okay, dig all the holes first. And then put the plants still in the pot, in the holes, just to make sure that this is how you want these plants to be in your garden. So much easier than digging them out. Okay, this is me. This is me planting this wonderful rose campion. I always have buckets and I fill them up with water. And every single plant I put in my bucket and I let it stay there until it stops going glug, glug, glug. Because no matter how well you water your pots, they're never fully saturated. So I make sure that the plants are fully saturated and moist before I plant them. Then I get out the plant and I make sure that the root system is the way that it should be. That it's not circling around. You make sure you pull it out, like that rose campion that I showed you. You see how the roots have gone? So what I did was, and this is the best tool, get it at a garage sale for $1 or a few dollars. You cut off the bottom and you also make slices on the side. So that way, make sure that the roots are going down, because plants are stupid as far as what they need to do. If the roots are going around and around, even though they have the area, they'll keep going round and around. So make sure that the roots are separated and are ready to go and meet their new area. And then after you have planted, make sure that you tamp down and make sure that they're a little bit above, because it will settle. And also you may be putting some, so what you do after you've planted is watering, smart watering practices. Number one, buy drought tolerant plants, water less frequently and longer periods. You see people with their lawns every day, they're watering their garden. Okay, water in the morning, so that way if the leaves get wet, they dry out. Soaker hoses are one of the best inventions. They're really great to get your plants established. And this is the reason why you're wetting the roots rather than the foliage. And it uses less water and reduces any kind of fungal diseases. I live in an area that's very humid, so I have a problem with fungal diseases. So I have to be very careful how I water. And general rule of thumb, 1 inch of water a week, get out a tuna can or whatever can, and when you water, whether with a sprinkler or whatever, you measure that 1 inch. And of course, if it's hot and if you just planted, you may be watering more frequently.
Measure the so close.
I'm sorry?
You measure the water with so close.
Oh, gee, that's a good question I never thought about.
You can just, yeah.
Oh,
And
the
just
question,
pan underneath it.
wait. She asked, for you viewers, how do you measure with a soaker hose? Okay,
So you can put a can underneath the soaker hose and let it run the timing and it can see how much is gathered in there.
okay,
I mean, it's an approximation.
right. Okay, or you can use your, finger or a tool and just, dig how far, not right directly by the plant, but somewhere where the soaker hose isn't near a plant, and just dig and see how moist the soil is. Okay. All right, organic mulch, please mulch, okay? Good reason, because it's aesthetically pleasing. It retains the moisture in the soil, keeps the temperature of the soil even. Whenever you go to an area that has mulch and you pull it away, you'll notice that the soil is a lot cooler because all of the heat is absorbed by the mulch. It nourishes the plants as it decomposes. When it touches the soil, it starts decomposing. So you're giving a time-release fertilizer for your plants. It helps stifle the weeds, and don't we just love those weeds? And it controls erosion. And please do not let the mulch touch the plants, okay? Because it holds on to moisture and you don't want your plants to rot. Okay, now we're gonna go into plants. Okay, bulbs. When you see bulbs, that means spring has arrived. And what is a bulb? These are all bulbs, even though they're not really all bulbs. Some are corms and tubers, and you see that they're all varied. But what a bulb has, it has everything that that plant needs in order for it to come from, erupt from the soil and to do what it needs to do and have a flower for that 1 year. So all that is needed is stored in that bulb. And as you can see, there are so many. And there are bulbs that bloom, plants that bloom in the spring, mid-spring, late spring. Read the label so that you can have a nice spring full of blooms. All bulbs must be planted, that bloom in the spring must be planted in the fall. And if you are too busy, not lazy, but too busy to plant your bulbs, plant them in pots and put them outside, and they will be blooming. I think you can plant up till like the end of November, maybe the beginning of December, but if you plant them that late, they will bloom later and they will be shorter for whatever reason. Okay, most of these bulbs are perennials, but some are not. Narcissus, this is one of the best bulbs to get. There are so many varieties. And why is it one of the best bulbs? Because deer don't eat it. And there are so many varieties. Now, after they're done blooming, deadhead for neatness, but don't just take away the foliage. You need to leave the foliage in order for photosynthesis to happen so that the bulb will get the nutrients that it needs for the next year. So you need to leave the foliage. As awful as it may look, you need to leave it. And then later on, you can get rid of it. So daffodils need at least 6 weeks of those awful foliage to be hanging around. And wait until the foliage dies. Oh, and you can divide these daffodils anytime. I have plenty of them. The house that I live in came with a lot of daffodils, and many times when I buy new plants and I'm planting in an area that I haven't planted before, and of course you forget where you have your bulbs, I come across my daffodils. So what do? I dig them out, and then I look around to see where would they look nice, and I throw them. And I leave them. Why can I do that? Because daffodils have, oh, I forget the name of it's a type of a root that moves and finds its way where it will grow best. So when I go out in my garden in the spring and I go to an area where I threw some bulbs, there are those bulbs laying on the side with the roots coming out, going into the soil. So if you are planting daffodils, you can make mistakes at how deep to plant them, except when it's too deep. That's not good. And the daffodil bulb will find its way and make sure that it's in the Goldilocks position to bloom. So daffodils, I think, are wonder bulbs, and there's so many varieties. And I love them because the deer and anything else, they don't eat them. Also, if you like to pick them and bring them indoors in a vase or a vase, please don't put them with other plants, with other plants that you have cut, because they exude a liquid that kills off the other plants that you have in the vase. And then when you do carry the daffodils that you cut to your house, you will notice that there is a liquid that comes out. So make sure that you don't put them with other plants in your vase. Tulips. When there's a group of singers that make a song and they have a #1 song, and then you never hear from them, what's that called? Yes, that's tulips. They're a 1-year wonder or one-shot wonder because the first year is their best year. Then after that, they decline. There are some species, very few, that will continue to bloom every year. But for the most part, it's once and it's done. Okay, and if you buy tulips in a pot, don't bother planting it in your garden. Okay, because it will not come back very nicely. And each year they will diminish, and not only that, but the deer love them. Okay, and if you plan to have them come back, make sure that you deadhead them, because it takes a lot of energy if you don't deadhead a plant, meaning taking off the blooms that are spent, what happens is the plant spends a lot of energy making that seed to have the next generation. And that energy is spent on making that seed instead of putting all that energy back into the bulb. So with tulips, one-hit wonder, unfortunately. All right, overcrowded bulbs. When you see that the blooms are not as much as they were before, you need to divide them. So you need to dig them out, wash them so that you can get all the dirt, get the good ones, and then plant them wherever you want. If you don't have garden space, or if you want to do this on your deck or someplace else, or give it as a gift, you can do lasagna bulb growing. Just go online and just list lasagna spring bulb planting. And they will give you different examples. And with these examples, you will see that you plant the bulbs at different depths and they bloom at different times. Yes?
I was just
Oh,
gonna say-
God.
No, you're fine. I did it before. Just don't let it sit where there might be frozen. I had on a deck and it stayed too wet and a lot of them rotted. So if
Yeah.
you want to make sure it's good draining and it has not just a single hole, because if that freezes, the water can't get out. So make sure you have,
That's a good point. Thank you. Okay.
but it's pretty.
Yes, okay. Then we have perennial bulbs. We have Allium Millennium. It was a perennial of the year 2018. And it blooms for a nice long period of time. Whenever I put long blooming, that means that it blooms at least 4 weeks or longer. Because there are a lot of plants that only bloom for a week or two, and that's it. All right, I use these little symbols here, and information I will have on all the plants that I highlight. I always put the botanical name because different areas call these plants a different name. So it's better to know them by botanical name. And that's also how you usually find them in catalogs and online by their botanical name. Then I always put how tall the plant is going to be, the mature height, and also how wide. So how much spacing you need. And then I always put the zone, because if you plan to have a container garden, you need to know what the zone is in order for the plant to come back. And also, if you want the plant to come back in your garden, you need to know what the zone is so that it comes back in your garden. Then I will put the time that it blooms. And that's important because if you go away, let's say in July, don't buy plants that bloom only in July. Buy plants that you'll see blooming while you're home, while you're there. And then if it's a good cut flower, this will be the symbol. If it's pollinator friendly, which means butterflies, bees, wasps, all kinds of insects that like either nectar or pollen. We need our pollinators. And if you're into that, you will see that. Also, if it dries well, I will put that. And also I will tell you what kind of soil. Some plants don't care what kind of soil they're in. They will grow in poor soil, meaning unamended soil, and some like fertile soil and only fertile soil. So that is really very important, because if they don't have the fertile plants who want fertile soil don't get that fertile soil, they'll never be the glorious plants that they should be. And then I put sandy or clay soil. You guys look for sandy, and all of these, most of these are. And then I have these wonderful symbols. This is the hot sun. Some plants just love that hot sun. This is drought tolerant, but only if they're established. This is our New Jersey humidity. You see that sweat? That's me. And this is if it doesn't like standing water. And then I put this if it's a good container garden type of plant. And then we have easy care. All of mine are easy care. I don't have time to coddle plants, and I'm sure none of you do either. And low maintenance. Most plants are, the ones I'm showing you, low maintenance. Very few plants are no maintenance. All right, and anything else? Oh, how much sun they need? And also this means that deer don't eat it. And this means rabbits don't eat it. So look for those things when you look at the slides. All right, then there are summer blooming bulbs on canvas, too many to list. These you plant in the spring. Costco has a lot of these at great prices. And all of these, most of these are not perennial. Some of them are. This one is a really nice one, Brodea. I love this plant, really a wonderful, and it comes back. Okay, know how deep you need to go. All right, and usually there's a chart, usually on the label or on the bag that these bulbs are in, or go online. But as I said, daffodils, they have this retractable roots that will go where they need to go, but not all bulbs do. Tulips don't. Okay, now we're gonna go into annuals.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
When they say plant a bulb or a daffodil, they say plant 4 inches or 6 inches, is that the top of the plant, the bulb, or the bottom?
I would say the hole is 4 inches deep.
And then you just put the bulb.
Yeah. I like questions. Yeah, you can ask questions. I like questions.
Irene, you want to take a break now, or is this a good spot for you? Or you
Sure.
know what's coming up, so,
Yeah.
all right, when it, 5:10, what do you want?
Oh, I don't care. As long as you don't mind staying longer.
Let's just do 10 minutes, let you guys get up and about, because they give you a chance to be unparched and go there and do that too. Yes, yes. Patty found it on Facebook. Euphorbia. So this is another, so Euphorbia, sometimes they did change the name, so this kind of, it's similar. So ILA and D on it. Yeah, I don't know how much more she said, but she said she looked at the point. We knew it was the first second we ever that. Anybody know what they are? And one of the nights they because you're not. So yeah, like she pulled all the. Yeah. But I don't know that I've ever, yeah, neither of us had ever seen that. Yeah. I would, I mean, it's either that or you're thrown out. So either you're not big, well. But, then again, start things around, you know, you can get them. I'm not sure. They have, yeah, I don't know. Who has to do but let's wait. I think that. Seals off the end, so that water.
I just realized she got my porch.
Oh,
I had COVID 3 weeks ago. I've been wearing a mask, but I didn't wear it today. Yeah, I know. Okay, so I've been able to. A little or something, right? But usually we had to have a little. We got back there. It's beautiful. Right, alley. It was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. So when they alley seed, I. So it
One of my friends. Right,
So.
Yes.
They're taking it.
Right, yeah. So I have like a little alley of seeds. So I'm thinking, I mean, I'll put that in the place of- like, you know, lighting in pots and. Yeah, yeah. Well, because we didn't want to spread it further. I mean, because they were all over the place. So I got to the, like, the big. Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually,
That's what I did.
I have it. So I had it in it was worse that time than it was this time. And this time, I had a cold, like 3 weeks. I had the symptoms. So, like, it started like Thursday. So Friday and Saturday, I gargled, so, you know, myself with a cold. And then Sunday I said, let myself out. Just so that when I get to work on Monday, I can say, I can take the cold. I go to church. And he said, so then on Monday and Tuesday, I was in bed. I felt it because I took my. And then also, you have 99. I said, that's funny. So then I was home. Yeah. He said, you have to say big shade. And we're in S for 5 days. Right.
So many.
Well, I really didn't. There's a new truck out. Like the last time they gave. They gave everything else. I was on that. No, yeah. I mean, not that I know, I mean, it's a bit shorter. And my eyes, I have cataracts now. That's my eyes, I work so here. I mean, I've been in classes with one of these like years. I didn't wear it. And you're wondering where I am. I really don't. But anyway, it lasts like 3 years. I wouldn't like it. And now I have things for class. So I got money.
Nice to see you.
I see you too. The pass is.
But now the doctor also said that I have cataracts. And then now they got it to the point where I really need to take care of it.
Wonderful.
Oh, yeah, I have cataract surgery. And you know what? You're
Probably use it on your hospital deer out. It's like that. It's natural. Well, ever since after Sandy had deer, before Sandy had no deer, and no rabbits, pulled deer out, and it smells kind of like. You know, I probably Uber spray, but probably do it. You're supposed to wait until after rain. But I do it and I buy it in the concentrate. Every year. Yeah, try that. That's huge. In fact, you know, for whatever reason, like my yard, neighbors at hospital that doing this line, take them. Now I put the deer out. Huge. Yeah, so I'm gonna give that a shot. And you know, natural.
Good talk. Very good.
Yeah. I think we probably had some around the park that we didn't. Put into case. We already have some, things in the greenhouse, that was already, people got close with this. So we're already taking people. Anyway, so we can just. More stress. Thank you. Now it's like.
Oh, okay.
I tried.
Go and I was ready. Exactly. I know, I don't keep the back up for cereal. Are you?
I tried.
All right, sorry. We can settle back down. You doing okay? Need anything else?
No,
You doing okay?
I know, I'm talking.
I know, that's okay. I just didn't want you to get too dry because I didn't get. And as we were talking, tulip bulbs. I have tulips at home that I bought and they've come back for me year after year and they've been fine.
Yes.
But they're like the double flowers. And then others, 1 year and I don't even waste my money. Species tulips, there are some that are specific.
Yes,
Species tulips are different. They come back year after,
yes.
but they're not the big tulip
Yeah,
hybrids.
they're usually short.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think there's one or some that have variegated leaves.
Yes, there are some tulips with the variegated leaves,
Yes.
yes. All right, everybody, start my phone.
Where one of the tulips say. The species.
Species, I mean, it'll say, so it has the genus and species. It'll say T and then, speciosa or something, it doesn't have an X or just a name.
Yeah, like a last name.
Yeah, it's got this, the genus and species.
Okay.
So, and then same with the daffodils, you've got the little,
Tete-a-tete.
tete-a-tetes, which are little, they're short ones, but I forget, there's naturalizing types, there's the big cone flowering types, so there's a lot of different varieties of those types.
Unbelievable.
So, all right, my veterans in the back,
Yes.
voices down, please, thanks.
Out of the ground every
Again, it's just part of it, you guys.
Oh.
Just pointed it out.
Oh,
So I had, a calla lily, they told me how to take the bulb out.
because it's not hardy in our area. The winter, the frost kills it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but with climate change, who knows? You know, you can stick some mulch over it. Okay, annuals. Annuals are wonderful. They're beautiful. Annuals, they complete their life cycle in 1 year, once growing season. Growing season usually ends with a frost. Okay, and these are perennial in other areas of the world, but not our world. So they only live 1 year. Okay, and they're very colorful. They're perfect for planters, for hanging baskets, window boxes also. And annuals, here are 8 good reasons to grow annuals. Non-stop color, usually when you buy them in bud if you can. They bloom from the spring until frost. Early bloom, long period. Some of them bloom just the whole season long. Some of them provide pollen and nectar for our pollinators. They can be inexpensive, usually easy care, versatile, like I said, planters, garden, and easy to change up every year. If you don't like your color scheme this year, next year you change it up. Okay, you can also grow your own, which is a lot cheaper. And not only that, you can grow annuals that you won't find at garden centers, or even in some catalogs. And they're so inexpensive. And all the information that you need are on the envelopes, on the packets. And they're really easy. Some you have to start earlier, like 6 weeks or 8 weeks before frost. And then that is time consuming. And if you have the time and the inclination, go right ahead. It's much easier to buy them. Okay, and here they come in cell packs. These are the ones that are less expensive. And you can mix and match. This is a wonderful nursery garden center that we go to, and hopefully we'll go to there this summer. Mix and match, they come in either 4 in a cell pack or 6 in a cell pack. And the ones that are in bigger pots, 4-inch pots, are the ones that they never sell in cell packs, because these are primo plants that they buy as plugs, and they're more expensive. Some of them are patented, so no, people don't have permission to grow them on their own. Even the growers that grow them and garden centers. But if you want instant gratification, here they are. Also, the beauty of these is that besides the variety that you'll never see in cell packs, is that you can see what colors you want, because many of them come in all kinds of different colors, as you can see these calibrachoas here. Look at all the different colors. Okay, this is my symbols key. You will be seeing these, and I will explain them as they come along. Took me years to get to that. But that's okay. One of the most easy care deer resistant annual is vinca or periwinkle. And they come in these beautiful colors. They are wonderful plants, easy care, really no maintenance once they're established. They are pollinator friendly. In fact, they have enough nectar that hummingbirds come and visit also. No deadheading needed, meaning that you don't have to be pinching out the faded blooms because they bury their dead, basically. Either, either the blooms fall off or the new blooms cover the dead ones until they shrivel up and just disappear. Okay, so these can be purchased in packs. They like rich, fertile soil. So if you don't amend your soil, you can definitely use fertilizers that you can buy. They don't care what kind of soil they're in, and they don't mind the heat and their drought tolerance once established. They do not like to be sitting in water. And those of you who live by the shore or live in a city where during the winter, the snow gets thrown on your bed and that snow contains some of that salt, you can plant these in that area and they'll do very well. If you're planting any plant, annuals or whatever in a planter, then there is maintenance because you have to make sure that you water adequately and also that you fertilize adequately because you're watering a lot. All that fertilizer is going through. Yes, Susan.
Can you explain what annual is versus perennial? And I know you kind of get in there when you do biennials.
Okay.
We didn't really talk a whole lot about longevity.
Okay, these annuals will live for you from the time that you buy them or grow them until frost, because they are hardy in another area and they cannot live through a frost. They are killed by a frost. A perennial is a plant that keeps coming back, a minimum of 3 years. And there are perennials that only live for 3 years. So they go under that label. Yes,
In terms of planting in large pots, is it okay to put a filler in the bottom, like corks or bluebills?
I am so glad that you asked. And the answer is a big no.
Repeat that question for online.
Oh, yes,
That's okay.
yes, I don't know your name because, I don't see it. But anyway, she asked, can you put something in the container so that you use less soil? And my answer is no, because for a number of reasons. The number one reason is the more soil the container has all the way to the bottom, the less frequently you'll have to water because the moisture stays in the container. And usually any pot, whether it's a teeny pot or a big pot, usually after you water, there's usually water sitting or moisture sitting on the bottom. So there is more moisture lasting longer when you have it filled up. Also, if you put any gravel or peanuts or any kind of shards of broken pots or anything, people think that that's better for drainage. No, because what happens is when there is a difference between the porosity of the soil and the porosity, the pores of whatever's underneath, what happens is where that soil ends is where that moisture collects. So it's not draining any better. It's just making the soil be wetter nearer to the roots. So please don't do that.
I'm not gonna be able to move my pots.
I know.
Well, then get dollies. Get these things that are round or square that have wheels, and then you can move your pots around. but you're doing yourself a disservice. You can continue to keep doing it. It's up to you, but you're gonna be watering more often. And you're doing a disservice to the plants. You're depriving them. Okay, so, okay, so if you're planting any plant in a container, you need to water more frequently and you need to fertilize. And yes, you can put compost in with a potting soil, and that's another thing. In a container, you never put your garden soil in there for a number of reasons. Number one, it's heavier. Number two, it may have weed seeds in them, and it may also have disease in them. So you're starting off with something that's not really good. And I don't know about sandy soil, but clay soil, it also crusts. It forms a crust on top, and when you water, instead of the water going down to the roots, it's going off to the sides of the container. So please do not use your garden soil. Potting soil is specifically made for pots, hence the name, potting soil. And the reason being that they mix certain things like some peat moss, some vermiculite, some perlite, and bark, and other things that hold on to the moisture when you water and then let it go. Because you don't want your plants sitting in too moist soil. So potting mix is a good thing for your pots, your containers, and don't waste your money on those crystal things to keep water, so you don't have to water more. It turns out that they did studies and it really doesn't always let go of the moisture. So you're wasting your money, yes.
Yeah, the moisture, so it's, for soils, especially if you do bag soil, potting soil, that has the moisture crystals in it, sometimes it stays too wet for your plants. So you wanna watch that, or when you pick it up, you feel the difference because it's kept the water in the bag and now it smells. So, I actually, when I was in college, I did have to do, that was when they were just coming out with it and we were trying to figure out what worked. And scientifically, it did hold the moisture, but did it let it go enough? If that's where it was a problem. Or if you put too much, if you add it yourself, you create this big slippery, slimy mess in the top of your pots. So you want to be careful about that. But it's what they use in diapers. That's what helps.
Yeah, somebody
Well,
was very
moisture
smart.
bag.
Yes, yes. So yes, don't do that. And also, you don't really need to buy potting soil that has fertilizer in it. It's much cheaper I like to use the pelletized ones. And you read the directions. I mix it in with my potting soil. And then, from time to time, I may sprinkle some on top, depending on how hungry those plants are, because some annuals need more fertile soil than others. And also, the pellets, they disintegrate, they have a coating. And when you water, and also because of how hot it is, that coating goes away. And the more often that you water and the hotter that it is used up a lot faster. So to me, pelletize is so much easier than buying the fertilizer that you have to mix with water. Then, use half strength, full strength. That's too much for me. Get those pellets, use them, and there's a whole bunch of them. Really easy. Don't give yourself more work. Okay, so that's why I have the fertilizer here. You do need to fertilize. And there are a lot of plants that really, as Sue said, do not like to sit in very moist soil. They just rot away. But this one is a great plant. And what I also have here is you can grow this from seed, but it says perfect for health strips. What the hell is a health strip? This is the piece of property that nobody wants, but that you own and are responsible for. So certain plants don't mind living out here and being abused not only by the conditions of the soil, but by also visitations of various critters, animals. So, yeah, so it's usually poor soil, and the ones that have shady trees, they're usually more difficult, but there are plants that do well in these conditions. So that's what's called a health strip. There are other names, but I think health strip really is very appropriate. Okay, so look at how well they do. Okay, they do very well. Even this is something else in containers and around your mailbox. Okay. Oh, and also I think I mentioned that it goes by the shore very nicely. Okay, another plant that I love that I think is very easy and comes in all kinds of different colors is Angelonia. What a wonderful plant. And this is another plant that doesn't need deadheading. But from time to time, it's nice to cut it in half or something, and it'll make it branch out more. All right, this, the deer don't eat either because it has a fragrance like grape soda. I haven't had grape soda in years, so I forget how that smells. But also the hummingbirds love it, and hummingbirds are really nice. Let's see. So I mentioned everything here, and this doesn't mind being moist. When you see this little raindrop here or water drop. So there are different colors and different heights. This is deadheading, just in case you didn't know. This is not this is Morticia doing this. Don't do it that way. You go all the way down. And here, this is from Garden Gate. You go down, this is spent. So you go down to where you see that there's going to be more blooms. After that's done, then you go down to where you see there are more blooms, and then you go all the way down. This is a plant that I'm going to show you. When I was working at the garden center, my job was obviously to water and to make sure that the plants look great. So I would deadhead. So this, you don't do the Morticia, you go all the way down, and this plant, you can deadhead and it will bloom the whole season long, which is what it did for me at the garden center. Okay, so Angelonia, you don't need to deadhead, and look how nice it looks in the garden. And if you want it in a container and you want it to cascade, make sure that on the label, it says trailing or cascading. If it doesn't say that, it will not do that. Okay, so it needs to say that on the label. All right, I think, and this is low maintenance. You don't really need to do much. Okay, this plant used to be one of the #1 plants that was sold. Why? Because it's so easy. You can grow it as a house plant also, and it can take part shade, full sun. Deer don't eat it, rabbits don't eat it. Why not plant it? So it comes in cell packs, so it's a less expensive plant to plant. And it likes average soil to fertile soil, but it doesn't like standing water. And if it's in a container, it also doesn't like standing water. It comes in these different colors, and the leaves are either green or bronze. And look how nicely it looks planted in gardens. And they really fill out. If it's a nice fertile area that you plant them, they almost look like a shrub. Really very pretty.
So if you grow those indoors, do they keep? I mean, since there's no frost, do they just keep?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, they keep going.
It's the tuberous ones that you can't have indoors, right?
What's that?
The tuberous begonias, those are the ones that you have to have a dormant period.
You know, I don't do indoor plants.
I want to say yes, that you are correct. The wax begonias, to be honest, I've never done the wax begonias in the house. Big thing is with begonias, fungus. Too much moisture and they get powdery mildew.
Oh, yeah.
Inside more so.
Yeah, because we kill them to death.
Yeah.
We water them, too much CLC. Right, and what's nice about begonias, and it's the same thing with impatiens, they are very easy to propagate. So you buy one or a cell pack, and then you can make dozens very easily. All you do is you just snip off a stem, you take off the bottom leaves. You don't necessarily need, what's that called? The powder. Rooting hormone. You just stick it in the soil in a pot, and then you water it adequately, but not too much. And soon you'll see that they'll develop roots, and then you can plant them out. So it's a nice way of making more plants without having to pay more.
Question online,
Yes,
for container planting, is there a general guide for plants requiring similar moisture? In my very large planters, I had tapping grass, salvia, and the runners. Because they suffered with too much water and the rest was very heavy.
take that verbena out.
So just read the basics about the question.
Okay, remember in the beginning, I said plant like plants together, the ones that need similar conditions. So moisture loving plants, you keep them with moisture loving plants. You never plant them with plants that don't need a lot of moisture. And the plant that Peggy
Yeah.
has said is a plant that does not want a lot of moisture. So it's suffering. Or vice versa.
Well, yeah, grass doesn't want it either, so maybe it was still too wet for.
Yeah, so yeah, make sure that you read that label. Okay,
That begonia you had up before the wax building,
yeah,
will that give a scent to the deer? Is
no, I think it's poisonous.
that what it is?
No, I don't know, but they just don't like it.
I have a problem with the hospital. Built there where they got the portion valves, and they're always eaten by the deer. I plant those begonias in there.
No, you know why? Because first of all, begonias are low. The hostas are not. If you want to plant something that the deer don't like, so that they don't go to the plants that you like, you need to plant at least 4 feet of whatever it
All
is,
the way around it.
all the way around it.
They'll just walk around it and get.
Yeah,
So I got some suspects.
Yeah.
yeah, they're not gonna keep the deer away.
I'm not spraying it.
Well, you do whatever makes you happy.
That dollar on that bottle.
Okay, here we have Biden's. This plant, would you believe, is a native from Texas, from down south, but Texas way, New Mexico. And it usually comes in yellow. The breeders have gone nuts in the last, I don't know how many years, and especially since COVID, because a lot of people started gardening. So they come out with all these wonderful colors, sizes, and with Biden's, you have some that grow, they usually grow up and they're very, what's the word? They're sort of ferny type of plants. And then they made some that are actually trailers that you can put in containers. So, you know, you have so many choices, and this is another plant that's perfect for the house strip because why? Where has it grown? Where did it start? Texas. Okay, it's hot down there and humid. So it takes humidity very well. Okay, here it is in garden and in containers. Calibrachoa. God, do I love calibrachoas. They are so wonderful. Deer are not supposed to eat them. But as you know, deer don't read. And if they're hungry, they'll eat whatever they see. Calibrachoas are like mini petunias. They're called million bells, super bells, trailing petunias, and they do trail. So they're wonderful for containers because they cascade over the side. And this is just, I would say, a teensy weensy bit of the varieties of these that you can get. They're really lovely, they're really low maintenance, easy care, but if you're planting them in containers, they are enthusiastic growers, so you may need to, you know, cut them in half or whatever, cut the stems so that they will give you more. Here they are in a garden, look how nicely they spread, and in a container, really lovely, very drought tolerant once they're established. This is a perennial in our area, but we grow it as an annual. Why? Because it doesn't like our heat. It really suffers in the heat, just like I do. So what you need to do is you buy it in the fall. You plant it wherever, planters or in your garden. Let it bloom its little heads off. And what's nice about it, they can take part shade or full sun. In a container, they do not like to be overwatered. They like to have a little bit of a dry period, just so you know. And let them do their thing. Then during the winter, you leave them there. And if it's a warm spell, you may have a bloom or two or more. And then in the spring, it'll start doing its thing again, and it'll be blooming for you until it starts getting hot and they start looking ugly and leggy and not blooming as well. And then you yank them out. So you will get 3 seasons if you buy them in the fall. So don't buy them in the spring to only enjoy them for maybe 2 months, maybe less. Buy them in the fall. Never leave a container empty. Always plant pansies in them, because that way you'll have something nice to look at. Okay. Let's see, did I leave anything out? As I said, they're drought tolerant. So in the container, don't make it soggy, but they love to be fertilized. They love rich soil. And the deer like them. I'm sorry. Okay, oh, and they're edible, by the way. You see them sometimes sold, the flowers. You can put them in a salad and really drive some people nuts. Okay, now there are foliage, there are annuals that have beautiful foliage. There are a lot of foliage plants. And most of these, in fact, all of these are annuals. And some of this can be a house plant. Some of these can be house plant. If you see part shade or full shade, many times, not always, they can be house plants. Don't do this in that house because they kind of go nuts and really grow.
What do you point, so for the people online, what one do?
Oh, I'm sorry. The sweet potato vine, do not plant indoors. Otherwise, you're gonna have, what is that show? Hungry Seymour? Yes, they will take over. Okay, choose plants that you don't need to dead in. I have them listed in your handout, so you don't have to list them. I did not list them in alphabetical order, just how they fit on the slide. All these beautiful plants, no deadheading needed. Like I said, they bury their dead. And here are some more. So there are a lot of annuals that you don't need to be deadheading all the time. Choose drought tolerant annuals, and there are plenty also listed in your handout. And all of the ones that are drought tolerant all need good drainage. And here's some more. Okay, those of you who have wet areas, here are wonderful plants, annuals that can take that wet. Deer-resistant annuals listed in your handout. I try to cover everything. Even salt-tolerant annuals. So you see a lot of them are the same. Biannuals. These are plants that only live 2 years. The first year is their foliage. Then they die back, and then the second year is when they bloom. And then after they're done blooming, they basically die. But many of these biennials, because they only live for 2 years and bloom the second year, they set seed and they self-sow. So their seeds are dispersed, so they'll have a next generation. And many people think that all these plants are perennial because they keep coming back. Well, it's not the same plant. But also what you can do is you can trick some of these plants. After they're blooming and not towards the end when they're going to be done blooming, cut the blooms off. Fool that plant into thinking it never bloomed. And it may bloom for you. I did that with foxglove one year. And I did it with another biannual. So you can play around with these
Would you
plants.
like the Alcea there, would you like go to the bottom and just cut the stem? Where the
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But you know what, yeah, and make sure that you don't leave any seeds formed on that plant, because it will have accomplished what it needed to do. Okay, I showed you this before. I love this plant. This self-sows. It comes in this nice magenta color. It can take full sun, part shade. It has a nice furry or hairy leaf. Comes in white, comes in that wonderful blush color. Pollinators love it, including the hummingbirds. Blooms for a very long time. You can also fool it and cut it and make it think that it didn't bloom for continual blooming. And also to not have as many little volunteers popping up all over. But if you want them to pop up, make sure you don't mulch in that area, because you are killing those seeds by mulching them, by cutting out the sun that they need in order to germinate.
It's not a big deal because you got enough of them.
Yes, yes.
It's nice, but.
It's a really nice plant. It can go a little crazy, but you know, it's easy to yank out. I don't mind self-sowers that are easy to yank out. Some self-sowers, you need a spade. Okay, so this is really nice, and you can grow it by the shore. And the British have given it an award, and you know, the British are not always easy to please. So if they're pleased with it and give it an award, we should be pleased too. Okay, so very low maintenance, and I think I covered everything. Oh, and poor soil. Those of you who don't feel like doing anything to your soil, this is the plant for you. Okay, perennials live 3 years or more and usually go dormant in the winter and return in the spring. These are all perennials, I think. Okay, they come back every year. They typically have deep roots, not always. They're great for erosion controls because, you know, with the living by the shore especially, you have erosion problems. Many can tolerate dry spells once they're established. They provide pollen and or nectar for pollinators, seeds for birds, and nesting material for birds. And they're ever changing. Perennials are never the same from spring until fall. They're always changing. Most require maintenance. Yes. When I was working, each time I'd work at the garden center, I'd have people coming in and saying, I'm sick and tired of buying annuals every year. I'm going to buy perennials so I don't have to do anything. Really? They are maintenance. They are not easy care. Some are. There are some that you have to do nothing, like peonies. You plant them and they come back for 30 years. Okay, but not all perennials are like that. Okay, deadheading. I mentioned it before. This is why you deadhead, unless you don't care. Okay, so here's another slide as far as deadheading, because it's a little different. It's with perennials. And then again, you go down to where you see another bud coming or another bloom coming. And when they're done, you go all the way down. And this I showed you before. This I showed you before, because these are all perennials. And then there are some that have so many flowers that to stand there and be deadheading, which I had to do at one place where I worked while mosquitoes were biting me was no fun. So the best thing to do is you just grab that plant and you shear off like for about 4 inches from the bottom. And what will happen is that plant will send new shoots and new blooms. Because again, you fooled it into thinking that it didn't bloom. And it needs to bloom in order to have progeny, in order to have the next generation.
So cutting is okay with a scissor as opposed.
Oh, you can call it, right. Oh, yeah, cutting with a scissor, a knife, anything that cuts, yes. And so much easier to do it that way. And with daylilies, for neat mix, you can take off each spent bloom because they do only bloom for 1 day. And make sure that you do it carefully, that you don't knock off these nice buds because they come with a lot of nice buds. Okay, so pinching and pruning, if the plant is planted in an area where they don't get enough sun, they get leggy. What does leggy mean? Leggy means that the plant is reaching for that sun that they don't get enough of, and the stem extends, and it gets lanky and leggy and sometimes even floppy. So if you have a plant like that, you pinch it and it will branch out, but you also move it to an area where it'll get more sun, because you don't want to be constantly pinching a leggy plant. You're not treating that plant very well, so it's not going to treat you well either. And just be leggy. All right, and how do you pinch? You pinch right above the node. Okay, you see those little things? Those are little nodes.
Not the center picture, just let.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. It's the center picture. Everybody, center picture. Okay. And it will encourage those nodes to branch out, and it will be a bushier plant. And you do this for over-rambunctious plants too. Or plants that you really want to be bushy. Yes.
With something like the begonia there on the left, if it gets very leggy and there's no leaves anymore, what happens if you cut just the stem or you still get?
Okay, if there are no leaves, it's a goner.
So just cut it all the way at the soil, so at the ground.
Move it from wherever it is, but if it's all just one stem, no leaves, it's a goner. You know, it's not gonna give you
I
anything.
mean, that branch, so like that. Let's say you want to make it much shorter and you cut it below with the leaves. All that, branch, or should you just cut that stem all the way?
That's a good question, Sue. Did you hear that question?
So if it's a geranium, right?
Right, geranium.
So it's geranium, that's okay, yeah, you could cut, so if there's a stem, you've got flowers and a little leaf up here, then is it like nothing, the stem, and then there's leaves down here, then you would cut it down to where there's leaves again.
But if there are no leaves,
If there are none, yeah, you cut it as far back to the main plant as you can, and hopefully it'll push. Sometimes, usually if there's no leaves, there might have been leaves there originally, and there may be buds, and it might push out, but you run and bring it back into the main plant.
yeah, there might be some nodes that
Yeah,
are tiny and that you can't see, but you can't guarantee that. So move the plant, so that doesn't happen.
always bring it in if it's small enough, we can take a look at it.
Okay, so here's a slide which you have on canvas that you can look at more. And you will see that when you pinch, the nodes will push out new stems. Okay, so one of the things about perennials is they need to be divided. Why? To manage the size, some get a little bit enthusiastic and spread more than you want them to spread. Also, it keeps them vigorous because you're making basically new plants. You improve the health of the roots to better absorb the water and nutrients. You stimulate new growth and vigorous blooming. And you'll see that when a perennial, instead of having like 10 blooms, that year it only has about 5. It's because there's no room for it it needs more nutrients, more everything, and it needs to be divided. And you can make new friends. And now that you're gonna be master gardeners, look at all the new friends you're gonna have.
When do you
So
divide?
share, what?
When's the?
Oh, okay, good. Okay, let me tell, oh, I didn't mean to leave that little thing up there. Okay, this is how I divide. You can divide any way you want. I don't like dividing like this. Oh, like the one that has the fork space people online.
Thank you.
Because you lose parts of plants. Because it's just dry. Okay, I also don't like to use a knife because again, you lose some of the roots and some of the plants. And some people, they just dig out, which is okay. What I like to do is, first of all, I like to water the area. Remember, I have clay. I like to water the area where the plant is living. That will loosen the soil and also nourish the roots so that they're easier to separate. Then what I do is I take that container, which I love, the black container, everybody online, and I fill it up with water. And I take that whole clump that I dig out and I set it in there and I let it sit there for a while so it gets soppy wet. And then while it's still in there, that's when I do what I'm showing here. Oh, I'm sorry, on the bottom, people, my preferred way, I take and I just give it gentle persuasion and just pull it apart as much as I can. And that way I will have more plants because they will have roots. You know, women or people with long hair, when you go into the water, when you're swimming, what happens? Your hair separates, okay? But when it's dry, it's very hard to separate. Same thing with the roots. They separate in the water and you can just have, it's not me being cheap. It's me being frugal.
I'll do it either way, but the forks or the knife,
Yeah,
I'm too lazy. I will do daylilies if I really want to sell them and split them. I will do them that way in your bucket of water so that you can see the roots and you can see where you need to split. But there are some things that will not split unless you have a shovel.
Oh,
something
absolutely.
to actually scrape it.
no, that's very true.
Yeah,
And
just
I would
depends
never,
on what it is.
and I would never use the word,
That's next.
and I would never use the word lazy. I use otherwise occupied.
Oh, I'm otherwise preoccupied, yeah.
Okay, so dividing perennials, when is the best time? When somebody asks. Okay, on a cloudy day or overcast, especially if there's gonna be rain, because you're gonna be planting these divisions elsewhere. Spring is the best time for many plants because either dormant or they're just starting to send their shoots, so there's less foliage to play with. And also the root system hasn't developed more. Okay, summer, if you're going to be there to water. If you're not gonna be there to water until they're established, don't bother dividing. Fall, no later than 3 to 4 weeks before frost, because again, they need to get established because winter can be quite harsh. Okay, water the perennials a day before you dig and also after. When is the worst time? When they're in bloom, because as I said before, it sends a lot of energy sending that bloom because it needs that next generation, which the plant hopes will go into seed. Okay, in the heat of the summer, unless you're there to water them. Close to the first hard frost. Okay, let's go into perennials. So again, being frugal, you choose perennials that have multi-seasons of interest. Believe it or not, they are evergreen. They look that way wintertime also. They come either the size of a dime or as large as a grapefruit. Many are hardy, many are not. Read the label. There are lots of hens and chicks but you have to look at the label to make sure that it comes back and it will overwinter. The only thing that hens and chicks need is the sun, full sun, and good drainage. They don't even need a lot of soil. But they cannot take standing water. So it needs good drainage. Hence the cactuses and hence these X's. Live by the shore, great in containers. And what happens with hens and chicks, they're basically biannuals. Because what happens is they have the foliage, and then the second year they have the flower. That's the mother, that's the hen. During the growing season, the hen will throw off all these little seedlings like this. And once she flowers, she dies. So then the chicks take over and they become the hens. And you can move her around anywhere you want. Look at where you can plant them. You can plant them anywhere, in a wall, in a shoe. But what it needs is good drainage. This is on my patio in New Jersey. You see, this is during the winter. How nice to have something pretty to look at. And that's the year I didn't have pansies, but this is colorful all winter long. In Europe, they use this on roofs. And in fact, they're called house leeks, because what do? They actually insulate the house, and it keeps the house cooler and also warmer in the winter. Europeans are a lot more frugal than Americans. They do all that they can to save money. Okay. Look how pretty that looks. And tell me, how much soil is there? Not really that much. And basically, there's no maintenance. But it does need good drainage and it does need the sun. If you're growing this where there's not enough sun, you're not going to be happy. Okay, another evergreen. So with these perennials, I'm starting with when they're blooming or when they're interesting. So I'm starting with evergreens first. So hellebores, there are a bunch of them from different parts of the world. We do not have a native hellebore, and they are evergreen. They are poisonous, hence the deer usually do not eat them. Unless there's nothing else for them to eat, then they will. Rabbits don't eat them either. They grow anywhere from 18 to 24 inches, and you need to space them nicely. And some of them take a while to get established, some year to get established. And they're very drought tolerant. Why? Because they develop a long taproot. So once you pick a place where you're going to be planting them, you don't move them. Because if you don't take the whole taproot along with the plant, that plant may not survive. Now, as I said before, it takes a while for them to get established. But what's wonderful about them, because they have a long taproot, they can take a lot of shade and a lot of drought and can be planted under trees. But the trees have to be deciduous, meaning that the leaves fall. They should not be evergreen because the hellebores need that winter sun to get all that energy in order to have these blooms. And what's beautiful about hellebores is they start blooming during the winter, during the latter part of winter. Yes.
If anybody, after class, if they want, if you go around the side of the building, there's a planter that has some hellebores that are blooming. And then the stinking hellebore, which is the one with the more die-cut leaf that we had from the class, they're out front underneath the trees.
Yes, they're wonderful. And I used to think because I saw a whole bunch of them at Longwood Gardens, I thought they were native. They are not. Okay, and now that we have climate change, the Corsican hellebore will overwinter. Before it didn't overwinter because it was hardy to what, zone 6 or 7? But now with climate change, you can get these. So what's nice about hellebores, They start blooming in the winter, and this is what they look like when they start blooming. And then once the bloom is done, this is what they look like when they're going to seed. So for people who don't know, they think that this is a flower. So it always looks very nice. Okay, Lenten rose or Helleborus orientalis was chosen as perennial of the year in 2005. And that general genus, species was chosen because they're easy to grow. They come in all these wonderful colors and more. I showed you that slide before with them at Longwood Gardens, and this is what their leaves look like. So they're really very pretty, and they do tolerate the salt, which is nice. And look at all the different colors. They hybridize them like crazy. Don't they all look like artificial flowers? These are real. And they're wonderful. Pollinators love them, especially pollinators that come around in the early spring, because they're looking for that pollen and that nectar because they need it. So they are best under deciduous trees. Let's see, and they like fertile soil. Now, why do you think they like fertile soil? It took me a while, but I figured out a number of years ago that plants that like part shade or shade usually like fertile soil. Now, why do you think that is? Because, why is there shade? Because they're living where the trees are. And what happens during the fall and winter? The leaves fall on the ground. They stay there. No one's coming with that noisy blower or rake, and the leaves decompose for years. And as they decompose, they're providing nutrients in the soil, hence making that soil very fertile. So most of the time, plants that like to live in the shade usually like fertile soil. Okay. Sedges. I love this sedge. I have grown this sedge. In fact, that's my garden in March. They are evergreen. There are many sedges, some that are native to New Jersey, native to the United States. This one, New Zealand. Looks like a mop head. This is what it looks like throughout the year. And look how pretty it looks when there's frost on it. It is no maintenance, basically. The only thing is sometimes in the spring, you may have some dead stems. What do you call the leaves? Dead leaves. What?
Blades.
Blades, thank you. Blades, and you can remove them. And many times, whenever you do have a grass, all you have to do is wear a rubber glove and just bunch it up and just pull, and those dead blades will come off by themselves. Okay, great for a rain garden. Have you guys heard about rain gardens yet?
You haven't
Yes.
gone over them yet.
Oh, you haven't gone?
No, Dr. Seaton.
Okay, okay. All I'm gonna tell you is, when you're looking at catalogs, when you're looking online, you will see plants that love wet, which this does, but it can take dry. Plants that love wet, many times they'll say, this is a great plant for a rain garden. And a rain garden is where the rainwater goes when there's too much of it, and it stays in this area for a number of hours, if not days. So plants that love wet, this is a great place for them. But you have to look at the label or at the site where they're showing this plant, and it has to show you the cactus or that they're drought tolerant, because how many times do we have weeks and weeks of no rain? So that area is dry. So many plants that love wet cannot tolerate dry. So please be careful when you're told this is great for a rain garden. It has to say that it's dry tolerant. Because if it doesn't, it's not good for a rain garden. It will rot away. Okay, let's see, anything else that I should mention? And that's because it's evergreen for 4 seasons of color. And because of the texture of the blades, deer don't eat it, and neither do the rabbits. And I don't know what they like. Too many things. Okay, another plant that's evergreen is coral bells. And coral bells they have hybridized them so many different colors and so many different leaf shapes and sizes. And this is deer resistant. The deer usually don't eat them. I can't grow mine because I also have a groundhog. And the groundhog likes them, so I can't grow them. And nobody has put out a list of groundhog resistant plants. And I'm waiting for that because there are a lot of plants that deer don't eat that I have that get eaten, and I'm pretty sure it's the groundhog. I hate that groundhog. Okay, so anyway, so here we have all these wonderful foliage. And what I recommend is go to mountcuba.org. It's a wonderful place. Go there online, but you need to go there yourself in person because they grow a lot of native plants and they also do testing of a lot of perennials, 50 or 80 at a time for a number of years. Here is what they print out. In fact, oh, I don't have time. I'll show you later. They put out, if you go there in person, they put out booklets of their trials. Good, what do you call it? Paper.
It looks like a magazine.
Is it like a magazine? I'm gonna show you later. I bought one that they did on fluff. They do all kinds of perennials, and they trialed 83 different cultivars of whatchamacallit, coral bells. Now, in the United States, we have over 30 native coral bells. In New Jersey, we only have one, which I will show you when we do the native stock. But anyway, you need to go on that site because they will tell you which coral bells are the best for your garden situation. They are wonderful. They can live by the shore, but they don't like standing water. And here is one from France, Citronelle. And this one is gold, and it has silver under the leaf, and it has white flower. The flowers don't look like much to write home about, but the hummingbirds love the blooms of the coral bells. So no matter what the color is, do plant them because they are wonderful and they can take part shade and they can take full sun. But if you put them in full sun, they need to be watered more because they really like part shade. Okay, this is Hakanakloa, Hakone grass, Japanese forest grass. I love this one. This one is like a little moppet, and this is my garden, except for the one in more sun. That's not mine, but this is in my garden, and look what this is part shade, and look, you can see the gold, but the less sun that they have, the more green they are, the more chartreuse they are. But in the sun, look how gold they are. They are wonderful. Deer donate them, and look, they got an award from the Brits, the horticultural award. Okay, they are drought tolerant once they're established. I use them as edging plants. So this is in an area where I have shade plants, and I use them so that I don't step into my bed accidentally. This is in another area where it's part shade, and I use it as an edger.
Yeah.
This is what the blooms look like, yes.
Can you go back to the previous? What is black walnut tolerant?
Oh, okay. Some people have disproven that. Well, some people believe what they want to believe. And black walnut, they exude a chemical called juglone. Juglone impedes germination of seeds and plants being able to live in that spot because of that chemical. If you have a bird seed thing and you have sunflower seeds, you will notice that nothing grows underneath. Why? Because it exudes a chemical that impedes any plants from germinating, from growing there. So juglone is the chemical that black walnuts exude. So some people believe that, and some people say that's
Yeah,
not
it's
true.
still, the jury's out. You got half of the horticulture community says it does have an issue. Half of the community says it doesn't, so it's still a.
Yeah, but I put it there for those who believe, because I'm nonpartisan.
Try it. If it doesn't grow under there, then you.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm showing you this slide, which has gold leaf plants. Because when you have gold leaf plants, just like that slide I showed you from Deep Cut Garden, they're head turners. When you look at the garden, what do you notice first? The gold plants, obviously, and then your eyes go elsewhere. But they're really wonderful plants, and the more sun that they get, the more gold that they are. The less sun, the more green they are. And there are gold plants for the sun, many of them. I love this plant. This is Valerie finis. Wormwood or artemisias are notorious for being invasive, for spreading like crazy. This one does not. Well, not in my clay. But they're not supposed to be as invasive. Look how beautiful the foliage is. The silver foliage, very drought tolerant. It's almost like felt. Look how beautiful it is on that slide on the right on the bottom in a garden. That nice silvery. And here are the blooms above that. Nothing to write home about. If you don't like what the blooms look like, you cut them off. When you see that the stem is coming up to have the blooms, just cut it off so it doesn't take away from the beauty of the foliage. Now, the deer don't eat this, not only because it's furry or hairy, but also because it has an aroma. So that's two things that the deer don't like about this plant, so they will leave it alone. Again, because it's gray, it needs very good drainage, otherwise it will rot. And when I put down very long-lived, that means that it will live 5 years, 10 years, 15 years more if it's in the right spot. Okay, let's see. Is there anything that I missed? Okay, this you can't kill. Okay, this is a wonderful fern, Japanese painted fern, that I learned has been around since the dinosaurs. I thought somebody bred this or hybridized this. This was here way before you ever thought it would be here. I love this plant because of the colors. It looks great next to any plant that is dark leafed because it echoes the coloring in the fern itself. And what's nice about ferns, especially this one, is you can put it in a planter and it's guaranteed to come back because it's zone 3. So that's one less plant that you have to put in a container each year. Okay, let's see. Average to fertile soil. It's a great ground cover. And now, was it last year or the year before, we had that awful hot summer where a lot of things died? This, I thought, died. It came back. So you can't kill it. Okay?
Don't step on the crown.
What's that?
Don't step on the crown.
Oh, yeah, except if you go stepping on the crown. So please, no stepping on the crown. Okay, and it tolerates a whole soil, a whole wide range of soil and light condition. You can see part shade, full shade, and sun. And if it's happy, it will self-sow. but you're not gonna have a lot of them. If I have one here, maybe I don't know your name, the lady in red. You may find another one over there. How did it get there? Who knows? Maybe some ants, because ants love seeds and they're also pollinators. Did you know that? And some seeds actually have something on them that the ants like. Okay, so this was perennial of the year. Very long-lived, as I said. You can't kill it unless you step on the crown. Okay, then choose perennials that are long bloomers, 4 weeks or more, and that don't need deadheading. Okay, here, if you only have one plant for part shade that you can plant, that the deer won't eat, that will bloom from spring to fall without deadheading. Why wouldn't you get this plant? This is Dicentra luxurians. And if it's happy, it will self-sow. And I love self-sowers. Those are all free plants. So it likes everything except standing water. And of course, part shade. And plants that live in part shade and self-sow in part shade will germinate in part shade. They will not germinate in the sun because they know they can't take it. So these cute little pantaloons, you can see them all season long, and the deer don't eat it because of the highly dissected and lobed foliage. And as I was telling you before, anytime you have this type of foliage that's highly dissected, plant it next to bold-leafed plants. It'll look so much nicer. Okay, oh God, I love my Zizia. Zizia is wonderful. Unfortunately, I think in sandy soil, it might spread a little too much. But it blooms from spring into November. I took a picture of my Zizia in November and it was blooming. Not full bloom like this, but there were blooms here and there. So this blooms on and off all season long with these Queen's Anne's lace type of flowers. And the deer don't eat it because of the foliage. And let's see, it's a New Jersey native. It will self-sow and also it will spread through their root system. It's perfect for a rain garden because it can take drought and it can take wet, it can take sun, it can take shade, it can take everything and anything. It's a wonderful plant, and also you can eat it if you want. So the knives and fork, that means it can eat. But what's important, if you care about your pollinators, it's a larval host, which is this. And what is a larval host? This is some of the common visitors to your garden. We all don't like this dancing white. This is the cabbage one. We don't like it, but it still comes around. And what do they have? They have babies, ugly babies for the most part, not as cute as our babies. And what do their babies need? And who loves them? And who needs these babies? Birds in the spring. Why? Because those little babies, just like our babies, can't eat solid food. They need something soft and squishy. And what is soft and squishy? The larva stage of the butterfly, once the eggs hatch. All those caterpillars. You know, one of those babies needs at least 600 of those a day. So we gotta have those kinds of plants that are hosts to our pollinators. So that the birds, because we do need the birds, they eat insects too. And we need those insects eaten. Okay, and also butterflies and moths. All right, this geranium, first time I bought it Mother's Day. It was blooming. This plant bloomed until frost. And it spread nicely without Some plants that spread kind of root wherever they hit the soil. This one does not. However, this one, plant it where you want it, because I've moved some and they didn't come back the next year. They don't like to be moved. But look how beautiful that bloom is. And again, look at the foliage and see how it's planted next to plants that have solid and different type of foliage. So even if there were no blooms there, it still will look very nice. I can't plant this because if the deer don't eat it, because they do have an aroma, an odor. It's a little musky. I think it's my groundhog that's eating them. Hate that groundhog. Okay, no deadheading needed. Can you imagine something blooming all that time, no deadheading? Okay, another plant that self-sows like crazy. It's considered a biannual by some, a perennial by others, depending on where you live. And you see all those butterflies? If you want butterflies, oh my God, they love them. And this is called a see-through plant because it can grow wherever it self-sows and germinate. It can grow anywhere because the stems and leaves, the foliage, are so thin that you can see right through it. It's a wonderful plant. Pollinators love it. Hummingbirds love it. Whenever you see a hummingbird, that means that that plant has a lot of nectar. Not all flowers have nectar. Some just have pollen. In fact, the zizia that I showed you has no nectar. It's all pollen. But the early pollinators, they need that zizia in order to get that pollen, because pollen is protein, and the pollinators need that protein. And hummingbirds need that protein too. They love those larvae too, and they eat insects because they need that protein. They don't just need the nectar. Okay, you can grow it by the shore, can be grown from seed. In fact, anything that self-sows obviously can be grown from seed. I was recommending this plant for years to everybody because once it starts blooming, it just keeps on blooming. This is a wonderful in front of the border plant, and it's called calaminta because it has a minty aroma and deer don't eat it. It blooms and blooms and blooms, these cute little blooms that is full of nectar, and it does self-sow. These are the leaves on the bottom here. And as I said, the deer don't eat them. It's a great plant to plant in front of leggy plants because some perennials are leggy, even if they're getting enough sun. And this can take poor soil and it self-sows. I have some growing in my awful driveway that needs to be repaved where there are just little fissures and the seeds will find their way there and it will grow. So I make sure I don't step on it. Okay, it's a no-fuss plant, really no maintenance, and it was chosen finally perennial of the year 2021. I've been recommending this since 1999. No, 1989, when I first became a gardener, master gardener. Okay, here is this wonderful Agastache or Annie's hyssop. This one is called Golden Jubilee. It was hybridized in Holland for Queen Elizabeth's 50th anniversary. If you don't want to be planting coleus every year that has that color, you plant this wonderful Golden Jubilee Agastache, and it has these wonderful blooms that bloom for a very long time. And it's a really no fuss type of a plant. Deer don't eat it because Agastache is called Annie's hyssop. Annie's is licorice. I hate licorice, but I love this plant. It's really very nice and it's very heat and drought tolerant. In fact, I should have put that this is a good health strip type of a plant that will keep coming back.
A good
Because
the plant.
health strip.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry for my back.
No, that's okay.
I just thought about it. Okay, so it doesn't mind what kind of soil that it's in, which is great. Okay, super performers. Okay, these are for full shade, part shade, light shade. Not all plants can tolerate that. This blooms in the spring, 6 weeks straight, no deadheading needed. And after it's done blooming, you have this beautiful foliage that looks great until frost. And if it's happy, and usually happy, it will self-sow for you. How wonderful is that? However, the little volunteers don't always have all that silver, but still, it takes a nice place in the garden instead of a weed growing there. It's really very pretty and it doesn't need any kind of assistance from you whatsoever. No deadheading needed, and a lot of them can tolerate, there's a whole bunch of different varieties. In fact, I think this one is Sea Heart. This one has a really thick, very large leaf, but it's small. It's only 6 or 12 inches. But it's really very pretty. I don't know, yes, it can be started from seed. I don't know how it self-sows because I have not grown this. But what's amazing about this plant is that the blooms start blue and they go through different colors. They go through pink and white. So you will have 3 different color blooms on the same plant. I highly recommend this, especially since the deer don't eat it. And one of the reasons is the leaves. If you touch the leaves, have you ever touched the tongue of a cat? That's what this, yeah, it's kind of gristly. Okay, this is another Hanukkah cloa or Japanese forest grass. It's variegated. It will overwinter very nice. It was chosen 2009 perennial of the year. Look how beautiful the foliage is with this golden green, and look how great it looks next to bold leafed plants. And it's usually used as an edging plant. And it grows well in containers. This is my container. You can tell I take care of my containers very well. This is what it looks like in the spring. I don't water, and if you're growing containers, you have to water them in the spring, in the winter. You cannot let them dry out. I'm a bad girl. This is by my kitchen. I never water. And this is what comes out in the spring. So this is a very hard to kill plant too. It's really lovely, and I just leave the whole container with it. It spreads nicely, but not crazy. Average to fertile soil again, because it likes the shade, it likes fertile soil. And of course, the Brits like it too. Okay, Sleeping Beauty. This is an ephemeral. Ephemeral means fleeting, not lasting a long time. Ephemerals are native to our area. There's a lot of ephemerals native to our area. Not all ephemerals are. Dandelions. Narcissus. Daffodils. I know it starts with a D. Daffodils are ephemerals. Ephemerals are plants that come up, they do their thing, they bloom, and then they fade away. And they are dormant in the soil. Ephemerals, they do their thing, and they do their thing when? In the spring, before the trees leaf out. So they have full sun at that time. And when do they know when to come out? The temperature of the soil is warmer than during the winter, and in the spring, what do we get a lot of? Rain. So with the rain and the soil, they say, oh, it's time for us to wake up. So they wake up, they go through the soil. I love what this looks like when it first comes to the soil. They look like little mouse ears, yes.
I just have to say, I planted it second year now, but this will be the third. The first year I was so mad, I'm like, dang, bunnies ate it. Because I had just planted it and it was just a foliage. I'm like, gosh. And then I was so surprised last spring when it came up.
I was so excited, I'm like, oh my God, it survived. Believe it. So it's really kind of,
Yeah,
it's one of those like, oh,
Yeah, so it was at its end stage.
yeah,
when
it
you-
wasn't right. It wasn't the button.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't grow this because something eats it. I know it says deer don't eat it,
Yeah, I don't think you're doing.
so it's probably the groundhog. Damn
Buddy,
groundhog,
like I said, it might have just nibbled.
maybe, but yeah, I can't grow it. But what's nice is it usually comes in blue. And it also comes in pink and in white, but what's really very pretty, look at what it starts out like. First are the nice leaves and then the buds. Look how pretty the buds are. I love buds. Some buds are really very pretty. The buds are pink, and as they open up, that pink turns to blue. And then it opens up into this trumpet-like flower. And what's great about this bloom is for the pollinators, especially the butterflies, it gives them a landing spot for them to put their proboscis in that plant to get the nectar out. So hummingbirds love it too, because it has lots of nectar and it will self-sow. So you will find it in other areas. So this is an ephemeral, and you need to go to Mount Cuba or, oh, what's it called?
Bowman's Hill?
Bowman's Hill
That's.
in the spring, because they also grow a lot of natives. And you'll see seeds of this, really beautiful. Okay, here are more ephemerals. Some are native to New Jersey, some are not.
The ephemeral, since they died back completely,
Right.
can you plant other plants? What happened?
Oh, okay, this is what I do.
Question.
Oh, thank you. The question is, since they die back and you don't know they're there during the growing season after they've died back, how do you know that they're there so that you don't plant something else in its place? So I was thinking, what can I put there that will last, that can tell me where these ephemerals are? So I thought of something. I belong to Costco. White plastic knives, because they're thick. So I take and I put one on one end, north, south, east, west. And I put them in pretty deep, leaving about this much standing. So that way, if I'm looking for a place to plant a plant that I bought because I thought it looked nice and belongs in my garden, but hadn't planned it, and I see those 4 white knives sticking out, I know not to dig there. The only problem is when deer walk around, they knock over those knives.
If you're a rock collector, smooth rocks also work.
Yes,
I do that.
yes, I started out with popsicle sticks, but they rot.
But then
Okay.
aren't you left them with holes in your garden?
Yes, you're left with blank areas in your garden, so you make sure you plant other perennials or annuals that will grow and not let you see that hole in your garden,
But not on it.
but not on it.
So something that bends or.
It doesn't need to bend, it just needs to hide the sight of that hole. Okay, because that ephemeral is probably somewhere in the middle of your garden, but not on the edge of your garden. So you can plant something that will hide that hole, just like with the daffodils. You need to plant something so that you don't see that hole gaping in your garden. Okay, Bowman's Hill, look at that, Bowman's Hills Flower Reserve. I have it on the handout, all the addresses and the websites to go. And they're a font of information. This is another fern that you can't kill. This is Ghost, and it's also a lady fern. We have a lot of native ferns. The lady ferns are the hardier ferns, or the hardiest, and they can take drought better than a lot of other ferns. So this is a lady fern. It's related to the Japanese painted fern. I don't think it was around with the dinosaurs. Somebody must have hybridized it. It looks great with more sun. And as the season progresses, it is less gray and a bit more green. But look how beautiful it looks next to a plant that has dark foliage. Because the rib is reddish. And they're really very pretty. And ferns are really very easy. And again, very drought tolerant. And again, another plant that you can put in your container that will definitely come back because it's zone 4. So you need 5 and below, just like the store. Okay, European ginger. I love this ginger. It's so nice. It makes cover. It can take a good amount of shade. It's pretty, look what it can take. It can take the heat, the humidity, the drought, and also being wet. And if it's happy, it may self-sow, but not a lot. You may find one somewhere over there, away from where the original plant is. The flowers, you need to put your head on the ground in order to see it. And you wonder, how is it pollinized? Anybody have a guess? Good. Ants. Why do the ants like that? Because the seed has a coating with some gelatinous something or other that they really like. So they take that, they eat it, and then whatever's left is ripe for germination. There are a few plants like that it needs to go through an animal in order for it to germinate. This is one of them. And an ant is an animal, so is a mosquito. The most dangerous animal in the world, the mosquito. Okay, God, I love the hostas, as you saw in one of my previous slides. But as you can see, it's salad bar for the deer. They never need dividing, which is wonderful. They come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Some are as small as this, and some are as huge as 20-inch leaves. They are wonderful. The flowers, the blooms are either white or lavenderish. And some people actually feel that the blooms take away from the beauty of the foliage. So they actually cut the stems before they bloom so as not to take away from the beauty of the foliage. Because hostas are basically grown for their foliage. And they are very drought tolerant and they will grow under trees. Look, some people ring around the rosy type of a thing. Okay, as far as sun or shade, the more green of hosta is, the more shade it can take. The more blue it is, even more shade. The more gold a hosta has, the more sun it needs. So those are the basic rules as far as how much sun or shade they can tolerate. The one problem besides deer of hosta is slugs. And the older the hostas are, the heavier and thicker the leaves are. So they're less prone to be eaten by slugs. You can also spray them. And they live by the shore very nicely. And under walnut trees, if you believe that. Okay, look how wonderful. They come out with them every year, new ones. And you look at them and you say, doesn't that look like another one? So they look very similar, but some of them are really very beautiful.
Actually, a society.
Oh, there is, yes. Okay, they age as gracefully, if not more than we do. As they get older, they look better, as I mentioned before. This is my favorite hosta. It's called Great Expectation. These are the juvenile leaves. This plant is 5 years old. And if you like this plant, leave it in a pot for a number of years because for some reason it likes to be root bound. After it's been root bound for 2 years, then you plant it in your garden. And then this is what it looks like. This is the mature leaf. This is where it has more sun. This is where it has less sun. So you will see that there is a difference. I don't know why it doesn't, and it also has some white in it. This picture, for whatever reason, doesn't have it. But can you see how corrugated the leaves are? They're very thick, and slugs, as I put that little slug there, don't like them. Okay, Sum and Substance has become one of the most popular hostas because it is chartreuse. And the more sun it gets, the more gold it is. Look at the leaves, 20 inches. That, I don't think that's my hand. And also the plant below it is Hosta Siboliana, elegant. That's like the grandfather hosta. It's been around for years and it grows huge. If you leave the hosta alone, those two hostas will fill an area 6 feet wide, 6 feet across. But you have to leave it alone and the leaves will get nicer. So if anybody asks you for a division of either one of these 3 plants, tell them to go buy their own so that they can have their beautiful plants just like you do. So try not to move your hostas around. Try not to divide them if you can, because the older they are, just like us, the better they are. And honestly, they never really need dividing. Okay, which is another plus. Astilbe. I love astilbes because, like I said, I've been gardening in the shade, part shade, for many years. They come in all different colors except for blue. There is sort of a lavenderish. They're beautiful plumes that consist of hundreds and hundreds of little flowers that open up in succession. So they bloom for a very long time. And some of them, most of them are upright. And then this one is ostrich, something ostrich, which the blooms are like this. It's the only one. And for some of them, look at the foliage. They come in different colors. Most of the time, these colors come around in the spring, and by the heat of the summer, they've turned green. I don't know about this one though, but look how beautiful. And the deer don't eat them because they're highly divided or dissected. This one is amber moon, and it is a chinensis. There are many species of astilbe, and some need more water than others. They all like to be in part shade. If you put them in the sun, you really need to water them. However, if you look for astilbes that have their second name chinensis, which means it comes from, guess where? China. It is more drought tolerant, so you have to water it less. This one has an award from England. The new foliage that comes out red. And then it has red margin on the leaves. And then by the summertime, by the time the blooms come, the foliage is green. But look how beautiful that looks in the spring. But again, for me, the selling point is chinensis, drought tolerant. Okay, besides the color. Look at this little montage or vignette. No blooms, but look at all the different colors and look how beautiful that looks. And that's especially nice if you have no deer or groundhogs. Okay. All right, super performers for full sun. These are the easy ones. These don't care what kind of soil they have, whether it's rich or not. And they thrive in, this one is a native of the United States. It lives on the West Coast. It's not native to our East Coast. This is evergreen. This is what it looks like in the winter. This is a close-up of the flower. And this is the one that when you deadhead, you go all the way down. And if you keep deadheading, This will bloom all summer long. This is in front of the border plant. Yes,
Sorry, just if any, I just realized it is 12:30, so if anybody does need to leave, feel free, otherwise we're gonna keep.
yeah, I don't get insulted.
We'll have it on for, you are wealth of information, so I'm good with it, but I just want to let you guys know if you were.
Yeah, yeah, I don't get insulted. I have a lot to say. Okay, so this is nice. Love sandy soil, loves poor soil, because this lives on the beach. I don't know if I put, no, I didn't put a, okay, it lives on the beach, really. So it doesn't mind sandy soil. All right, anything else? No. Okay, this was perennial of the year. This is a wonderful plant, not only because of the airy type of foliage that it has. The flowers, it's not a long bloomer. It blooms maybe for a week and a half, maybe more, maybe less, with these nice blooms. But the beauty of this plant, besides the fact that deer don't eat it, and also because it's very long-lived, if it's in an area where it likes, this looks like this in the fall. This was at some botanical garden. Look how beautiful, and it never needs dividing. So you don't, or rarely. So you really don't have to do much, and these are the seed pods. Okay, here is a hybrid of this plant. It's short, blooms for a long time, may have yellow fall foliage. What I love about this plant is, look at the buds. They're like navy blue, and then they open up to this nice color. Really very pretty, long bloomer, and really, I should put low maintenance. It's not a lot of maintenance.
So this one is a long bloomer, but the other one was a short bloomer?
Yes. Yeah, you know, when they hybridize plants, they try to give them as many great attributes as possible. So a lot of them, they're hybridizing them for either long blooming, many times because of long blooming, fragrance may be lost. Now they're trying to correct that and have more hybrid plants that have aroma, because a lot of people will come into the garden center and ask for, I like to have, plants that have a fragrance. So they're doing a lot of hybridizing, and I don't know whether, I would have a nose there if it had a fragrance. But this is a long bloomer, has no fragrance, but is a long bloomer and very long-lived. Okay, salvia, oh yes, it has a fragrance. Can I tell you what I think it smells like? Cat urine. And deer don't eat it.
They will eat it though if it's not good bloom though. They talked to all of my salvias last year without it. There's no fragrance of them.
It could be where you are, because some people have no problem with it, and others I've heard that just.
Wow.
Yep, it does vary.
So,
They say it's not, but.
okay.
They
So
eat
what,
everything in my development. We're developed.
isn't that awful? So when it's blooming, it has no aroma.
It's just
Wow. Yeah, I've never smelled a stinkier plant.
I have, but that's not, that's what.
Oh, I know, there are others. Okay, so they come in white, various shades of pink, and various shades of blue. There's a whole bunch of them. There's annuals, there's perennials, and malodorous foliage is the way I would describe it. And deer usually don't eat them, and they're perfect for health strips. Okay, here, this one, oh, you see? This is May night. It was perennial of the year 1997, and it has all these wonderful attributes. Hence, it's great for health strips. It's really a very low maintenance plant, but if you deadhead it, it will keep blooming. Now, you can selectively deadhead, meaning each time one of the stems is done, you deadhead that stem and it'll continue to bloom. Or you can wait until they're all basically faded and then just give it a haircut and you will get another flush of blooms. But you're gonna have to wait a while because it takes time. Having a flower takes a lot of energy. It's just like having babies. Okay, Gaillardia blooms itself to death. Mine have never come back. Not only because they don't like my clay soil, but because having all the blooms all the time, and especially if you're deadheading, the plant just spends a lot of its energy and doesn't have enough of that energy sometimes to come back. They are wonderful plants. They are so drought tolerant and beautiful. And look at how beautiful their seed heads are. So leave those seed heads because obviously the birds like them too. They're great in containers, but they do not like standing water. So if you do put them in containers, make sure you're putting them with plants that also don't like a lot of moisture. Otherwise, you're going to kill that plant. And there's a whole slew of them. And we do have native ones, some that are native here. In fact, I'll show you one, and some that are native elsewhere in the United States. This plant, whenever anybody would come and ask for, what plant can I plant? And I want to do nothing. I tell them Nepeta, Walker's Low. This plant will bloom whether you're there or not. And once it's done blooming, or looks like it's done, you give it a haircut and we'll send a new flush of blooms, and you can do that the whole season long. This plant is a catmint and it's very drought tolerant. So once you plant it, once you have it established, then you really don't have to do anything. And look how pretty, down below on the lower right, line your walkway with that plant. And then when they're done, just go and give it a buzz cut. And then you'll have more blooms coming. And it's in the mint family, hence the square stem. But because it's in the mint family, the deer don't eat it because it has that minty aroma. Okay, this is the wonder. Yay, daylilies, which I cannot grow anymore because of deer. They love it. And when you're buying daylilies, because you can grow them, try to buy the rebloomers, like Stella D'Oro, Happy Returns. Stella D'Oro, I think, was the first one. Happy Returns came after that. It's not as garish yellow as Stella D'Oro, and it will bloom all season long, on and off, and you don't even have to deadhead unless you're a neat Nick, and you don't like the look of those, but it doesn't impede the amount of blooms that you're going to have. So I've been told. I may be wrong. What's that?
You're right.
Okay, so there are others that are also repeat bloomers. However, you have to look from where they come, because some are repeat bloomers down south. And in the catalog, they don't tell you they're not repeat bloomers up north where we are, or mid-Atlantic. So you really have to do your research when you're buying repeat bloomers.
All those rebloomers?
What's that?
Or some rebloomers,
All of them are repeat bloomers.
all of those?
All of those.
Yeah, I'd say there's the three, Stella, Happy Returns, maybe Rosy Returns are the best of that group.
Right.
That's a true read.
Yeah, pardon me, I haven't had that much luck with, but I put it on there for those who believe.
But there's a lot of different varieties. There's over 100,000 now.
Oh, at least, and a
Not
lot,
bloomers, but
and a lot unnamed ones.
yes.
You know, because there's a whole process to have it named. Okay, and it lives by the shore. They're very easy to take care of, and they live either in the sun or in part shade. But I would say that they like some shade because they will bloom longer, because the sun sort of fades them out, makes them work harder. Okay, this is from South Africa. And usually you see these plants by the shore. It's called Delosperma or ice plant. They come in different colors, but this one is the one that blooms most of the season, no deadheading needed. Loves hot, dry, does not like standing water. This is perfect for a health strip. Phlox, I can't grow phlox. My deer love them. Flax is a native. This one is David. And look at Mount Cuba and also Chicago Botanic Garden. They also done studies. This was perennial of the year. The blooms are like this. They look like hydrangea blooms. And they have a nice vanilla scent. But the deer tend to eat them before the blooms come out because they don't have a scent. So the deer love these plants and I can't grow them. If you're into pollinators, Mount Cuba did a study on the phlox, and I have their booklet, which I'll show later. But this is not as big, the blooms, but there are a lot of them. And the pollinators, out of all the phlox that they tested, this one had the most pollinators coming to the blooms.
It's beautiful.
It's
I
beautiful.
love it This fall.
However, it's tall. It's like 4 feet tall compared to how tall regular phlox are. And it's also mildew resistant because phlox does have a problem. They do have problems with mildew. Okay, another great plant that doesn't need much care and in your sandy soil may tend to spread a little too much is yarrow. And you can see all the different colors. And if you deadhead these will encourage more blooms. And it has that highly dissected foliage, which the deer don't like, but also it has a musky aroma. It's malodorous. So that's another reason deer don't eat it. And also it's poisonous. So there's 3 strikes for the deer to not eat this plant. But just remember, they need dividing. They do tend to spread, but they're beautiful, really beautiful. And they thrive in poor soil. Now, who doesn't want that? Okay, here's another one that's been chosen as perennial of the year. This is Coreopsis, and the deer don't eat this one. They eat other Coreopsis, but this one they don't eat because of the highly dissected or needled foliage. This blooms its head off all summer long, but you have to do what you have to shear it in order for it to get new blooms. This is the plant I told you that lives 3 years. This is the one to get, Zagreb. Zagreb is a little shorter. It's more yellow. It comes from, oh God, Serbia? The capital, Zagreb, I forgot, but it's the Eastern, countries, the Iron Curtain countries. That's becoming a more Iron Curtain. Anyway, this one blooms a very long time. The deer don't eat it. Pollinators love it. It makes a great cut flower, lives by the shore, takes everything and anything except for wet feed. False sunflower, Heliopsis. This is in the sunflower family, sorta. And this, when I grew it, it just kept blooming. I didn't deadhead. I would go out and it bloomed for at least 2 months until the deer came. Then I didn't have it anymore. But look how beautiful the blooms are. It loves my clay, hence it bloomed a long time, but my deer love it too. And it's great for a rain garden because a lot of our natives are very versatile in that they can tolerate the heat, the drought, and also wet conditions. So this is a really great plant to grow in your garden. It is not native to New Jersey. And also when you see attracts beneficial insects are great because they eat the bad insects too. Coneflower, look at all the coneflower varieties that they're coming out with. Whatever you do, if you're into pollinators, please, the right upper corner slide for you at home have coneflowers that are sort of like mums. They have multiple petals. those please do not plant if you're into pollinators, because they have a hard time getting to the nectar. Okay, because it's covered with the petals. And any plant that has more than one layer of petals is called a double, even though there's more. So you have a lot of coneflowers to choose from. Go to mountcuba.org, and they did a study on them, and they will show you which ones are the best for your garden. And here is our native, the good old purple coneflower. Now tell me, is that purple? But anyway, if you're growing it in your garden, please leave the seed heads, because our native goldfinches love the seeds and they eat them during the winter.
And I'm gonna, sorry, Irene, I gotta stop you here,
Okay,
just because I know there's somebody's coming in at 1.
okay, so I'm just gonna go through the slides. Look at all the beautiful plants. This is our native.
We're gonna have to have a separate class just for you.
Oh my God, this plant you have to plant.
I love them. That's a good one.
Yeah,
You'll actually have a lot of these. They're gonna come, Irene's gonna come back on Thursday, next Thursday, not this Thursday, but next Thursday, and do native plants. So she's gonna have a lot of these on there as well. Do you have a question? Oh, yeah, the tables, we will have to. Yeah. But if you can, if you guys are here, if you can stay, great. If you can't, I'll deal with it. Don't worry about it.
I'm trying to stay.
But thank you.
Trying to stay.
Plan to stay. Oh, okay, it's all good. All right, thank you, everybody online, and we will go from there.
Yeah, thank you.
Next Thursday, not this Thursday, next.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, and yeah.
Yeah,
For the Europe. Well, with the hens and chickens.
no,
They
because
wouldn't,
they
right?
want shade.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Together.
I
just took off.
They're wonderful, they're wonderful.
I was not anticipating it.
Yes, I didn't know.